call our meeting to order. Welcome to the Board of Education Board meeting. And I would like to greet our virtual and in-person public forum guests. Due to time constraints and limitations of the Zoom format, we will only be able to hear from as many guests as the 45-minute time for public forum allows. The guests who speaked up to speak virtually are in the waiting room and can hear, and depending on the device used, see the meeting. The guests who signed up to speak in person are here with us in the boardroom. When we get to public forum agenda item, your name will be called in the order it was received. And for the virtual guests, the Zoom meeting host will bring you into the main room to speak for 2 minutes. Please turn on your camera and microphone. For the in-person guests, please come to the microphone at the back of the room in the center aisle. You may not yield your time to another speaker. Once your speaking time is finished, the virtual guests will be ushered back to the attendee waiting room, and the in-person guests are asked to return to their seat. You may also choose to leave the meeting at that point and watch the YouTube live stream. At the end of the public forum segment, we will continue with tonight's agenda. So if you did not have a chance to say everything you would like to say, please email the board members at board.ed@aps.edu or call us at 505-880-3729. So tonight we're using a closed captioning feature, and the captioning will also be visible on the YouTube live stream. For those speaking during the meeting, please speak clearly so the closed captions are as accurate as possible. And so would everyone in the boardroom please stand as you're able and join in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
Thank you. And I'm also going to ask for just a moment of silence for those that have given their lives in service to our country. Thank you. So Dr. Albright, may I have a roll call, please?
Peggy Muller Aragon,
Here.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Here.
Barbara Peterson,
Here.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Here.
Josefina Dominguez,
Here.
Courtney Jackson,
Here.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Here. So Board of Education meetings are hybrid meetings with community members and public forum speakers having a choice to attend in person at the John Milne Community Boardroom or virtually at www.aps.edu. Presenters and recognition guests will attend virtually. Public forum, either virtual or in person, is part of the Board of Education meetings on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. And regardless if public forum speakers attend in person or virtually, all speakers must sign up for public forum for the APS for the public forum on the APS website the day of the meeting and before the start of the meeting. Please be sure to visit the APS website to check the agenda. You may participate by attending the meeting in person, watching the live stream of upcoming meetings by clicking on the live meeting stream button on the main board page at www.aps.edu, emailing input, comments, and questions to board members at board.ed@aps.edu, or again, calling us at 505-880-3729. So our first item for consideration and action is adoption of the December 7th, 2022 Board of Education meeting agenda. And as I believe there's some recommendations, Board Member Dominguez, did you want to make your motion?
Yes. I motion to move special items as special issues up to right after the superintendent's report. And I also motion to pull items 1, 2, 3, and 4 under the consent calendar. For discussion.
Okay.
And to vote on each individually, please.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a roll call, please.
Just to clarify, that was to move special issue items 8A, B, and C to be right after the superintendent report, and to pull items 1, 2, 3, and 4 from agenda item 7 off the consent calendar.
Correct.
Thank you. Peggy Mora Aragon,
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez,
No.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
No. Okay, so our next item is recognition of staff, student, staff, and community. And Board Member Jackson will lead us in that discussion.
Okay, welcome to our recognitions. Our recognition this evening is for the November Employees of the Month. Albuquerque Public Schools is made up of some very dedicated professionals. Each year, the district recognizes at least a few of these outstanding employees through the Employee Recognition Program. November's honorees are Amelia Candelaria, the Strategic Development Specialist at Edward Gonzalez Elementary School, who provides consistent coaching and collaboration for the school's staff. Amelia is an essential member of the leadership team and executes a shared vision and collaborative leadership approach with the Edward Gonzalez community. Elaine Florick, the registrar at Jefferson Middle School, is incredibly good at streamlining the registration process. Elaine is thoughtful, organized, extremely knowledgeable, and a community builder. Maggie Price, an administrative assistant who supports the Sandia Mountain Natural History Center, which is a partnership between the New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science and Albuquerque Public Schools. Maggie not only knows both systems, but has found ways to get them to work together and make sure things get done. Melanie Rodriguez is a workroom specialist at Painted Sky Elementary School. She's a hard worker who wears many hats in the workroom, classrooms, and the front office. Melanie is always willing to help with a smile on her face. Congratulations to Amelia, Elaine, Maggie, and Melanie for being named November Employees of the Month. Board members, please show signs of recognition for our employees. These recognitions will be displayed on the Board of Education recognition webpage. I encourage everyone to check it out, and that concludes our recognitions.
We'll move right into public forum.
Okay. I want to welcome our public forum guests who are in the attendee waiting room and in the boardroom. Whether you are here with a request for the Board of Education to consider, provide information, or just see how the Board of Education operates, we want you to know that you are welcome. The Board of Education has established rules for expected civil behavior during the meeting and public forum. As part of the process to sign up to speak tonight, you were asked to read a copy of the procedural directive that outlines those rules for expected behavior. The presiding officer will enforce these rules as appropriate throughout the meeting. The Open Meetings Act, NMSA 1978, Chapter 10, Article 15, requires that agendas contain a list of specific items to be discussed or acted on at meetings. Due to these rules, public forum is not a dialogue with the board members. Public forum is an opportunity for the Board of Education to listen to you and to hear your comments. In just a few moments, your name will be called in the order it was received. Guests who signed up virtually will be brought into the main virtual meeting room to speak by the Zoom host. When escorted into the room, please have your audio and video on and be ready to speak. Once your speaking time is finished, you will be ushered back to the attendee waiting room. Guests who are here to speak in person are asked to come to the microphone in the center aisle at the back of the room to speak when your name is called. When you have finished speaking virtually or in person, you may choose to leave the meeting and watch it on live stream. Tonight, there are 14 speakers in an effort, so everyone will have 2 minutes. In an effort to have all guests speak within the 45-minute public forum, please be concise and do not repeat what others have already said. You will be directed to please complete your sentence quickly at the end of your time so that others will have a chance to speak. And you may not yield your unused time to another speaker. If we do not
If you do not feel you were able to convey your message, please send your comments to boarded@aps.edu. In addition, for those of you who are here in person, there is a representative from the Student, Parent, and Employee Service Center who is here to help with specific situations. So at this time, Mr. Gonzalez, will you please introduce our speakers?
Thank you, Board Member Jackson. Our first speaker is in person, Donald Torres. Mr. Torres, you'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Madam President, my name is Donald Torres. I went to 5 Points, John Adams, graduated from West Mesa, Colorado College and the University of Texas at Austin. I've been observing the process of redistricting, and I have some serious concerns about the process and what's going to come out of that process. I think that there's a deliberate effort to racially gerrymander this district, and I can tell you that in a meeting for the representative for District 7, Mr. Scott Darnell actually admitted as much as that. At 120 minutes time, he said that there are 4 districts that have Hispanics, populations of 40% or higher, implying that was a Hispanic district. And then he said there are 2 supermajorities in proposals E and E1 that preserves those supermajorities. Now, what that does is it packs us all into districts 1 and 5, and that's what it does is it reduces my vote doesn't count as much as my neighbors, and that's a problem because of this gerrymandering. I'm also concerned very much about the conduct of the chairman of the committee, the representatives of District 7, particularly the chairs. They delayed getting data. They did not accommodate people when they asked for more time, more meetings, or more data, or whether or not they could have more access to reading the data on the maps. The population tables were totally ignored. That's 311,000 Hispanics who were not counted or brought at the table. And that is a serious problem. And so I'm requesting that you all go back to the table, look at
Mr. Torres, you've gone over your 2 minutes. I need you just to finish it.
Hispanic districts with 50%.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Our next speaker is Suha Amir. Forgive me if I said that wrong. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Madam President, Superintendent, and members of the board. My name is Suha Amir. I work with United Voices for Newcomer Rights, which is a nonprofit organization that works in partnership with the newcomer community. I came from Iraq to the US in 2008. Neither my family nor my community was counted in the 2010 census. When I found out how important it was to be counted in the census, that made me feel invisible and very sad. I do not support the proposed redistriction. We need district maps that include fair representation of minority groups in our city, in particular, the Hispanic, African, and Middle Eastern newcomer communities. The newcomer community is centered in the International District, and we must protect the representation of this area in the redistricting process. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is on Zoom. It's Mr. Joe Gallant. Mr. Gallant, are you there?
Hello, yes, sorry about that.
That's all right. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Hi, APS board members. My name is Joe Gallant, and I'm here speaking on the redistricting maps before you tonight. Map concepts E and its numbered versions do not represent Albuquerque and are not compliant with a common sense understanding of minority voting rights as a redistricting principle. The process that led us here was political, and this map would be another example of politicians choosing a map that they prefer while putting aside redistricting principles. Voting Rights Act was passed with the intent of equal representations in accordance with the population and that would be guaranteed. Somehow, despite making up 45% of the population, none of the maps considered even have 3 out of the 7 districts that are majority Hispanic. In this process, members solely selected by the board influenced maps in a separate committee in which none of the members were answering to a third party. Furthermore, this process did not allow for any member of the public to submit a map. And despite asks for maps that put minority voting rights as a redistricting principle at the forefront, none were made with 3 out of 7 districts of majority Hispanic voting age population. Unfortunately, this process was not independent, and I would ask the board to pass a map with 3 Hispanic majority voting age population districts. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you, sir. Our next 2 speakers are in person. The first one is Lisa Padilla, followed by Merle Tillman. Ms. Padilla, you'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Hello, good evening. My name is Lisa Padilla, and I am the president of the Bareilles Neighborhood Association. I'm a lifelong Burqueña, and as a Chicana mother of 3 students in APS, 2 of whom have graduated, as well as the aunt and cousin and friend of many teachers in marginalized communities, I came tonight to talk to you and ask you to treat the redistricting process with more equity and fairness, as well as transparency. I think that people who are represented in these districts deserve a chance to have more input. And I think that an independent commission is something that should be prioritized. I think that issues of equity that have long been neglected need to be treated in a very important and central manner. The Voting Rights Act and civil rights are, egregiously mistreated when we don't center those voices that have the most needs. Clearly, we have an undercount in our census. And so those voices that we really should be prioritizing are ignored and neglected. Please empower and lift up these families, these students and teachers and administrators who do such good service in our schools. And please vote for MAP G. I think that's the only one that treats this issue with the fairness that it deserves.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Tillman? Okay, we'll go on. Our next speaker is on Zoom. Rosalinda Dorado should be coming in the room now. Rosalinda, are you there?
Hello.
Hi, you have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Rosalinda Dorado, and I've been a community leader with El Centro de Igualdad de Derechos, and I live in the South Valley all my life. And I also graduated here, and I was very thankful with my APS teachers and everything. So it's really sad when I'm seeing the results of the redistricting. So I want to acknowledge first the maps today are results of months of work from the board, but the maps that are being presented today do not reflect, represent, or much less include the current divisions of districts of our state. Based on the polling data, much work conducted by the census, by these communities that are very much being left out. If the federal, the state, and the local level communities were working together to ensure that these Hispanic communities were not left out, why can't our APS process also do the same? We must make sure that our communities, our Hispanic communities, who make up the 45% of the voting age population with APS, be representative of these maps. We want to make sure that 3 of the districts that are being presented in these maps are majority Hispanic. So this means that we need to make sure that the 2 maps, the map that is being considered with only 2 majority Hispanics is not the map, because it does not represent all the work that our Hispanic communities did during the census. Also, I want to ask to not dilute the voting strength of these ethnic, language, or majority groups. It is against our Voting Rights Act. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Diana Bustillos. Diana, are you there?
Yes.
You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Mi nombre es Diana Bustillos y he sido líder comunitaria del Centro de Igualdad y Derechos y vivo desde hace 22 años en el Valle del Sur de la ciudad de Albuquerque. Y estoy aquí porque quiero asegurarme que nuestros mapas de APS tengan 3 distritos que son mayoría hispanos. Hacemos el 45% de la población de APS. Con la edad de votar, los mapas que se están considerando violan la ley de derechos del votante y no vamos a permitir que quieran quitar a las comunidades la oportunidad de tener una democracia justa y precisa. En esta tarde les pido hoy que tomen el ejemplo de los otros procesos de distribución de distritos y que pongan las comunidades de colores como prioridad. Queremos 3 distritos de mayoría hispanos. Gracias.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gail Stewart. Gail, you there?
I am here.
Great. 2 minutes once you begin speaking, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Gail Stewart, and I'm here to provide public comment to let the board know about Albuquerque Public Schools' apparent failure to comply with state education regulation requiring the collection and analysis of data on the use of physical restraint and seclusion against our students. State Regulation 6.11.2.10 E5D of the New Mexico regulations required that during the 21-22 school year, the year just passed, all schools in New Mexico conduct an annual review of that school's use of restraint and seclusion. The specific language of the regulation says schools shall conduct an annual review and analysis of all incidents in which restraint or seclusion techniques were used, including the number of incidents, the type of incident, personnel involved, the need for additional training, and student demographics. It does not appear that APS complied. I have asked for public records from APS since August, indicating that schools did this annual review. What I was told is, I'm quoting, there are approximately 3,194 records that could be responsive to your request, end quote. So what this tells me is there was never an analysis. What the district has been sending me is individual records, about 4 pages at a time. I think I've received 12 pages since August. With the district saying it's very hard to send me 3,000 pages, but that is not what it was being asked for. The district was asked for its proof that schools did the analysis. And so what I've learned is they didn't do the analysis, and the district needs to understand that it's apparent that there were over 3,000 cases or incidents of restraint and seclusion last year of our students. Thank you very much for allowing me public comment.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Patricia Wilson. Patricia, you have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Patricia Wilson. I've lived in Albuquerque's Southeast Heights for 50 years. I'm a practicing architect, business owner, landlord, and neighborhood volunteer. I have not been able to do a deep dive into the APS redistricting maps as I've been immersed in the zoning code update process. Because I have not had sufficient time to review all the maps myself, I am relying on the advice of my APS District 4 board member, Barbara Peterson. Board member Peterson attends nearly every meeting of both the Victory Hills Neighborhood Association and the District 6 Coalition. We trust her judgment and share her concerns about maps E2 and E3, both of which appear to favor more affluent areas and areas where developers are looking to expand. Older, less affluent parts of town are already overburdened with problems. And according to Ms. Peterson's thorough review, maps G and H have less disruption of existing districts and provide better representation. I respectfully request you consider maps G and H. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Angela Vigil. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm also in Victory Hills Neighborhood Association. I'm the vice president of the Neighborhood Association. I just want to say that I would hope that you all will vote for letter H. Barbara Peterson, our board member, has had the time to go through and read through all of your records, all of the different scenarios with the maps, and has suggested that this seems to be the most equal for people like me who are I'm a Chicana, and I want to make sure that my kids of color, African American, Black, Native American, etc., Mexicanos también, that they get their that they get fair and equal opportunity. And I believe that Barbara Peterson has selected what she thinks is the best for our students. Our kids of color will have the best chance at making it in school, in APS. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is in person, Mr. Franklin Gama.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Elder, I'm here to thank Mr. Elder for his visit to Montezuma Elementary School this afternoon. I've been there for 13 years as an employee, and it was a great visit. We have a very unique staff and population of students, and I'm very proud to be a part of that community. What I've noticed about that community, however, is that we don't only have a specific special education department that go beyond everyday educational assistance, administration, and so forth to make sure that your students are safe at all times. And I'm very proud of that. I also recognize, however, that the behaviors within the regular ed portion of that school has gotten more and more difficult to manage. And this is nobody's fault. But however, the administration portion of the school is the ones who are getting most of the back-breaking work. This could be solved, however, if you were to follow your policies and procedures when it comes to discipline. And that doesn't only go for location number 315, but it goes for everybody. And also, I would like to shout out Board Member Peterson for her amazing work, as she is the representative of that particular location. You're being an ally for people of color, specifically students of color is not always easy. So I appreciate your work and your dedication to the Board of Education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is on Zoom, Mr. Ian Johnson Escuerdo.
Good evening, APS board members. Thank you for your time and consideration tonight. My name is Ian Johnson Escudero, and I'm the Dean of Students for grades K through 8 at El Camino Real Academy. I'm here to speak on the behalf of renewing our charter for the next 5 years. I wanted to speak briefly to you tonight about my unique perspective working with El Camino. I began working there as a 5th grade general education instructor, and then transitioned to become the Dean of Students for grades K through 8. And then at the beginning of this past school year, 22-23, enrolled my 5-year-old son as a student. So I speak to you with the perspective of not only a teacher, not only of an administrator, but that also of a parent. And I wanted to speak to one of the strongest and most incredible qualities that El Camino has, and it's the dedication to community. In a lot of ways, it is like a large family, like an extended family. And you see the dedication and the care that the teachers have for the students, and you see it daily, not only in the instruction in the classrooms, in the interactions between them, but in the students themselves, in their growth, in their character, and in their resilience, particularly as we're going through the past few years with COVID and coming out of it and the transitions that they have had to face and surmount. So again, just with a perspective, a unique perspective here, because I've both been an employee as well as a parent, I just wanted to let you know that El Camino Real is a very truly special place. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Maureen Scourin.
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Maureen, you have 2
Yes,
minutes.
so my name is Maureen Scourin. I have a degree in geography. I was on the New Mexico First Statewide Redistricting Task Force for 2 years. And I've also written a book chapter on how to evaluate redistricting plans. So after I did evaluate your redistricting plans, out of the ones under current consideration, I would ask you to support Concept H. The metrics are somewhat similar for the plans under consideration, but Concept H moves the fewest people into a new district. District stability has been favored by courts in New Mexico and elsewhere. And also it helps to have the board members and the constituents maintain ties. Concept H is also a little bit better as far as adhering to geographic borders, with the northern border of District 4 aligning with the freeway. So again, I ask you to please support Concept H. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Owen Brown. Mr. Brown, are you there?
I am.
You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
My name is Owen Brown, and I'm a proud parent of 2 kids here in the South Valley of Albuquerque. I am asking you to please consider Map H for all of the reasons that all of these other far more prepared speakers have mentioned, period. I would also like to mention I am from a family of educators, and I am also an educator, and I am hearing and seeing some real fear across the district in multiple schools, in staff and in students, specifically around the policy that the board passed, KB1. I've had kids crying in my classrooms. Both of my sisters have as well. I'm hearing from staff members, and they are legitimately afraid for their jobs and their positions and their ability to truly be themselves. So I know that reconsidering the policy at this point is probably not going to happen, but I would beg that you reconsider how this was implemented and how this was steamrolled out, so that more community members aren't afraid of your policy decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Madam President, that concludes public forum.
Thank you. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on with our agenda, but we're going to move things around. So hopefully the folks that are on the are out there are ready to present. So our first items, we're going to go to special issues. And our first one is, oh no, we're not. We're going to go to the superintendent's report. I'm telling you, I was prepared for that. I'm sorry. Our next item is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Elder, you have the floor.
Thank you.
I apologize.
I understand that the agenda is long and you have a lot to do. So my report, I have really cut short, but I was specifically asked to add one item, and so I've got it in here. So I do want to tell you about some things that are happening around the district, specifically what we're doing to get ready for this shift in governance and procedures. So members of the APS budget and strategic planning staff attended professional development training from Edunomics. This training provided practical skills in public education finance, including cost drivers in education, analyzing how policy affects resources, strategically allocating resources to reach desired outcomes, and communicating finance strategies and decisions to audiences. These skills will be valuable as the board moves forward to student outcomes governance. And there has been great progress made these past few months on the board's work to build its goals and guardrails for the school system, but I wanted to take a few moments tonight to share an update on our work with the Tuned Education Partners, who we have partnered with to support the development of the district's strategic plan. Per this board's direction, the district's strategic plan must be responsive to the goals and guardrails set by the board. Given that, Attuned has worked this fall to execute the diagnosis phase of the planning process. That process relies upon gathering data from multiple sources to help assess strength and stress improvement in our efforts centrally to support student achievement. While their timelines and some methods have shifted per our direction in order to allow the board time to set the goals and guardrails while engaging the community broadly, they are on track to provide us a report to help guide my team's reflection and planning in January. Specifically to date, to support the strategic planning efforts, Attuned has created and supported a process for district staff and board members to identify a diverse group of stakeholders who will be asked to participate in our strategic planning advisory committee started in January. You don't have to take notes on this. I'm going to send this to you in writing. You get a nice memo from me, so that's all. Collected and analyzed student performance data and other data elements to identify trends and outcomes. Collected and reviewed a host of instructional artifacts to help gain an understanding of the district's systems to support teaching and learning. Conducted classroom observations at 24 schools across all 4 learning zones in October, visiting multiple classrooms on each campus to gather insights on classroom instruction. Interviewed 25 district staff and school leaders to gain additional insights into our organizational dynamics and needs, with additional interviews planned, and hosted a total of 21 unique focus groups with students, teachers, principals, district staff, and the Martinez Yazzie Council, with additional engagements planned with families next week to learn from our key stakeholders what the district's current organizational strengths and challenges are. It is important to note that Attuned was asked to pause administering a broad stakeholders survey, convening the advisory committee, and interviewing board members until the new year, given the broader engagement efforts underway for the board's work. Due to the ongoing work with the strategic plan and Attuned, the administration will be able to move quickly on embedding the vision, goals, and guardrails into the daily work of the district in a strategic manner. So my team and I are excited about the work with Attuned, and we'll be meeting with them this Friday for a session to support this planning work. We also have a series of meetings already scheduled for the winter and spring, and I look forward to providing additional updates in the new year. Just know that we've broken this down into phases. The current phase that we're in is data collection to support organizational diagnostic. Phase 2 is strategic planning. This will involve events like reviewing the organizational diagnostic, initial identification of priorities, development of initiatives, deliverables, and sequencing resource management. And we get into about April, we're looking at finalization of the plan and scorecard. And then in May, there's additional time to plan reconciliation if needed. What you'll see somewhat quickly as we move into January is that we'll begin to host 8 steering committee meetings with the APS cabinet, Attune will host at least 3 advisory committee meetings next semester. They'll re-engage with stakeholders through the focus groups and surveys, and they'll be collecting one-to-one meetings with district leaders to confirm the initiatives and deliverables. So I've got a nice chart for you in the email, and you'll have that all this evening or tomorrow morning at the latest. The APS Education Foundation grant cycle. So during the APS Education Foundation fall grant cycle, $200,358 has been dispersed to APS schools and departments. The 44 programs chosen for grant award funding are providing innovative and enhanced learning opportunities to help APS students reach their full potential. I encourage you to visit the APS Education Foundation website to learn more about the programs that are getting off the ground now. The foundation will open its spring 2023 grant cycle in February, so you haven't been chosen for funding in the past. Now is the time to apply. And on Saturday, December 3rd, the city of Albuquerque hosted their annual Twinkle Light Parade on Central through Nob Hill. Human Resource organized an entry, the APS Holiday Cheermeister, taken from the movie How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and it included our very own Grinch, AKA Todd Torgerson. This was a joint effort with student transportation and food and nutrition services. We handed out candy from generous donations, including a donation from Costco. Healthy snacks were also donated by food and nutrition service vendors. There are a few pictures on the screen of the successful event promoting APS. And the Grinch is there. It's hard to see him, but I've got a picture of him if you want to see it later. He did a really good job. And then finally, the fall attendance conference poster contest. The United Way Mission Graduate is working with the PED to do a statewide attendance awareness campaign to highlight the importance of school attendance. Several APS district and charter schools entered student artwork for a statewide poster contest supporting this new campaign. The first place APS winning artwork is on the screen. Links to all the winning APS artwork will be emailed to you. And this concludes the superintendent's report.
That's awesome. The tassel is worth the hassle. I like that. That was cool. That was great. Thank you. All right, so now I'll get it right. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I was like so worried about doing that right and I did it wrong anyway. All right, so we're going to move on to the special issues. And our first item for discussion is going to be update on the district's investment program for the first quarter of FY 2023. This is a discussion and our presentation will be Renette Apodaca, Chief Financial Officer, and Mark Turnbull, our Executive Director in Accounting.
Okay.
Just Renette.
Yes. Board Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Elder. This item for discussion is an update on the district's investment program. Board policy requires that we report to the board at least quarterly regarding the investment program. I do have Ms. Amanda Boyle, District Controller, to give that update. So Ms. Amanda.
Thank you, Renette. Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Elder. This is the quarterly investment report for the period of July 1, 2022 through September 30th, 2022. As you page through the report, you will note there's some market commentary and information about market rates, which continue to trend up in response to the recent interest rate hikes by the Fed. The summary overview page provides a breakdown of asset class, showing we have about 40% on deposit at the bank, 30% in treasury, and 22% in the local government investment pool. The strategy overview shows the current par total for the quarter at $500 million compared to $557 million in the previous quarter. And to highlight the holdings by type, our current money market funds are at $199 million compared to $109 million last quarter. Our funds held with the local New Mexico government investment pool has held relatively steady at $111 million. And our current treasury investments are at $190 million this quarter compared to $155 million last quarter. The rest of the report covers compliance information and specific details on holdings, and I stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions, discussion from the board? Thank you very much. I think the report was really helpful. I know there was some questions that were submitted ahead of time too, so we really appreciate the staff taking time to just review our questions, but I think we're okay. Thank you so much. So we'll move on to our next item. Our next item is consideration for approval of the APS redistricting plan, and this will be a discussion action. Wow, this one just has me listed here as the piece to do this. And so I know, I mean, I guess it's just, let me hang on a second. Let me go to my, bear with me because I'm using a new process. I'm going through using a computer, which is not the easiest thing.
High five to you.
I know, it's not hard. So I think where we are on this is that we have, I know we've had some discussion on this, and there was, some other additional information that was given to us tonight through, through public comments and where we are. And what we have to do now is we just have to review all of the details that we've had before us. And what we don't have is what that decision is going to be. I mean, I think we've got the maps, we've got discussion, we've had lots of items before us. And I know that there's still some discussion from the team that, and I'm just going to open it up for that so that we can just kind of go through the 4 concepts and any comments that the members have and things that we ought to consider together as a group. And I just want to say that although we had an independent group work with us, because it was an independent group that was representative of each of the districts, ultimately that decision still comes back to us as a board. We're responsible for the decision around how we redistrict our maps. And so I really appreciate the folks that worked on that and the recommendations that they gave to us. But now it's time for us to really just sort of take a look at that, figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to move forward. So I'm just going to open it up for discussion. And does anyone have who wants to start in terms of how we want to go with this? We've got 4 maps that are before us, E2, E3, G, and H. And we ultimately have to figure out how we're going to get through 4 maps because we have to make a decision on what it is that we're actually going to propose and what we're going to go forward with. So Board Member Gonzalez.
Yeah, I have a question. Is the team from research and polling here as well to respond to questions?
Yes, Michael Sharp is here with us. Yes.
Great, wonderful. There were some contentions during the public comment as well as in a blast sent out by the ATF this afternoon claiming that the proposed maps, a few of the proposed maps, namely the E-maps, violate the Voting Rights Act. I'm wondering if you could respond to that, whether there's any truth to that statement.
Board President, Board Member, excuse me, Superintendent, members of the audience and those attending. So I think we did discuss this a little bit the last meeting with respect to the Voting Rights Act. And the comments that we have heard are that due to the, I'm going to paraphrase, but due to the adult percent Hispanic of the district as a whole, that there should be 3 majority adult Hispanic districts. And the plans that under consideration now, I believe, have 2 adult Hispanic majority districts. And what was discussed last time is that when looking at the voting rights issues, we can't just look at the Hispanic population and go by what we might consider as proportionality. So, if you have 45%, then theoretically you might be able to have, say, 3 Hispanic districts. On the proportionality issue, that's not necessarily always the case that you can. Rio Rancho Public Schools has actually almost 40% Hispanic population, adult, but there's no way to create even 1 adult Hispanic district. Just an interesting fact about the demographic distribution within Rio Rancho. The city of Albuquerque and APS is a little bit different. But it is possible to create 3. But the question then becomes, do you have to? And that comes down to 3 basic factors, and they're the Jingles factors. So they basically say, is the population, Hispanic population, large enough and compact enough such that you can create 3 adult Hispanic districts? The answer to that question is yes, you can. We've shown that in a number of concepts that have been presented. The other one is, they kind of go hand in hand, but does the Hispanic population tend to vote as a block, as a group? Does the Hispanic population always vote for the Hispanic candidates? And the other the third Jingles factor is called white block voting. So does the white population vote for the white candidates. And does there really, those two factors are, it's almost like a crossover vote. Do the Hispanic population vote for Hispanic candidates, or do they vote for both Hispanic and white, and vice versa? Does the white population vote for Hispanic candidates or white candidates and crossover? So what we found in Albuquerque in general is that those last two prongs aren't necessarily met. Albuquerque area has a history of voting in Hispanic representatives at all levels of government, regardless of whether or not that district is Hispanic or non-Hispanic. And so due to that, I think that the way the districts are drawn, it's still, they still, I guess, comply with the Voting Rights Act. You're still not splitting up the Hispanic areas to crack them so that you can only elect, say, one. There is only one Hispanic district. And so I think given the factors of the history within the Albuquerque area and the population patterns and the voting patterns, that the four plans or concepts you have, E2, E3, G, and H, are all sufficient with respect to the Voting Rights Act.
Great, thank you for that. I don't have any other questions.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Barbara.
So I was not expecting personal shout outs, but I'm not sorry that I have alerted the community to these maps. And I think there's cause for serious concern. From some of the legal perspectives that I've gotten, a couple of points are that who is currently serving and representing the district does not necessarily impact or mean that there should still not be majority districts. And as I look, I mean, my first inclination is that none of the maps really serve that point. The only one that did in the initial group of maps was map C. And because it was so disruptive, because it caused such a major upheaval of existing districts, that I think the entire committee turned it down. But we still haven't seen a map that actually, in fact, represents the community the way it should. The E-maps do two what I think are very destructive things. One is that it packs both minority and low-income voters into three districts. It packs them into District 4, District 1, and District 5 in a way that is overwhelmingly different than the other maps. The other things that that map does, and although, I mean, I think one of the things that I've been proud of for the APS board over all of these years is that we really have tried to be nonpartisan. We are supposed to be nonpartisan. We are by statute nonpartisan. And it's clear that the committee was partisan. It's clear that certain members of the committee who took over dominant voice on that committee had worked in the Susana Martinez administration, have very political backgrounds, and worked very hard to craft these maps. You know, the existing makeup of this board is that two of our members were elected with less than a majority. District 7 and District 3 representatives on this board were elected with less than a majority. And when you look at the makeup of the new maps, it's clear that it solidifies that representation, whether it's that individual or new individuals, but still a community that's going to be reflective of certain viewpoints. The thing that most concerns me and has not been adequately addressed is the deviation of population. It is based solely to have the extremes that were in the E-maps can only be explained by very intentional manipulation of population sizes based on speculation, one, speculation of growth that may or may not exist in the Northwest and possibly in the Northeast, and total disregard of what we know is an undercount in certain other neighborhoods, especially the International District in the Southwest Valley. Any district that has a high immigrant community, a large homeless community, there is going to be an undercount. And the E-maps totally disregard those facts. And so basically the E-maps are based for the population deviations on imaginary numbers. The numbers that are on paper would cause less of a population deviation. So I have serious concerns. I think of all of the maps that are on the table, H is the most fair, the most just, the map that most closely represents where we are as a community. I'm not sure that any of them, and I think one of the things that we've all learned through this process is there is no such thing as perfect. As soon as you address one, and so I mean, I'm not saying this to disregard the work that was done by research and polling, because I think it's really clear that as soon as you address one problem, you create something else, either in terms of minority representation, population deviation, or respect for existing districts. There's virtually no way to satisfy all three of those things at the same time. And I think we've all recognized that. But I do think that there's no way to look at the E-maps and not say that there's deliberate and intentional desire to overrepresent the most affluent districts and neighborhoods in this community, and to disregard and undervalue and deprive of adequate voice the people who are most marginalized with the most struggles in their community.
Has any other comments?
Comment.
Go ahead, Board Member Jackson.
Okay, so just to confirm, with research and polling, we are only allowed to use census data when creating redistricting maps. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and all of the other entities within the state of New Mexico, starting with the state, going to the city councilors, going to Rio Rancho, all of the other entities within the state that had to go through this redistricting process, they also were only allowed to use census data. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So we can't just pull numbers that on that we think might be a possibility when creating a redistricting map. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. And just in terms of what's been mentioned before, yes, you can't try to take into account future growth and areas of not growth, but the numbers we use are based on the 2020 census.
Okay. Also, I just want to kind of go back and highlight one thing that you mentioned. You said it is, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, please correct me, but there is no way to create majority districts throughout the entire city based simply, or within this districting map, based simply on the demographics of the city.
I'm not quite sure. Could you rephrase the question? Just want to make sure I answer correctly.
So with the comments that have been brought up that there should be at least 3, there should potentially be 7 that are all majority majority minority districts based on the population of the city, is that possible to do? You mentioned something about Rio Rancho doesn't even have that.
Board Member Jackson, and if I misstated, I apologize if I wasn't clear, but within the city of Albuquerque, within APS, it is possible to create 3 adult majority Hispanic districts. In Rio Rancho, it is not even possible to create 1.
Okay, but not 7.
That's correct.
Okay,
Everybody said 7.
right. We cannot create 7 districts that are all majority.
That's correct.
Okay. So one other thing I want to point out are the numbers that we got were that the Hispanic population was around 47%. Is that correct?
Right. That's amongst the total population. Amongst the adult population, it's closer to 45%.
Okay, so 45%. Hold on, I'm trying to get. So if I look at E2, so around 45%, if I look at E2, what I see is that we have a District 1 is 72% Hispanic. District 2 is 46.7% Hispanic. District 3 is 47.2% Hispanic. District 4 is getting close at 43.5% Hispanic. District 5 has 71.2% Hispanic. And then we have District 6 and District 7 with 33.2 and 26% percent Hispanic. So it seems to me that we have 4, 1, 2, 3. We have 2 super majorities, and then we have 3 near majority. Correct?
Right. I think you would call those they'd be majority minority districts. They're not necessarily majority Hispanic. The percent adult white is less than 50% in those other 3. I think it's districts 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, so 5 of the 7 in the EMAPs, we have majority minority. And 4 of the 7 in the EMAPs, we have a near majority. And 2 of the 7 of the EMAPs, we have a super majority.
Right.
Correct. Okay. And just to state one more time, and I'm sorry if this is redundant, but I feel as though it's very important. You do not believe that the EMAPs violate the Voting Rights Act, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I would like to move for approval of E2.
I'll second.
I have,
All right, so I think we still have some more discussion. Go ahead, Board Member Dominguez.
so I have a question. Could you please clarify? So polling and research used only census data. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you have any way of knowing if any committee members might have had access to other political information and used it? Was there any way to discern that?
I had no idea. I had no way to discern that.
Right, okay. And then what constitutes a majority versus, like what number constitutes a majority versus a plurality?
We'd be looking at 50% as a minimum for majority.
Mhm. Okay, so anything under 50 is really more of plurality, is that correct? Or is there another? I mean, 9
go ahead.
near majority.
Yeah, I guess we look at 50% as saying above or below. Above 50 is majority. Below is not majority with respect to plurality. It probably depends on what other racial and ethnic groups are also being taken into account or examined. And so, that's basically it. Above 50 is majority, below 50 is not. And then you have to look at the other racial numbers to figure out what sort of plurality exists.
Okay, so if we follow that explanation, then could we review the numbers that Board Member Jackson just gave and be more accurate about the language there? So we have Were you, Board Member Jackson, were you looking at current districts or were you looking at the, or the proposed?
I was looking at concept D2, the 2020 census redistricting for concept E2
E2?
on page 193 of our packet.
Right. So I see 2 supermajorities in District 1 and 5. And then is there another majority that I'm missing?
I believe that the only majority, well, the other 2 majority districts in terms of ethnicity and race would be District 6 and 7 are majority adult white.
Oh, that's okay.
And districts 1 and 5, a majority adult Hispanic, and districts 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, and 4, there's no racial or ethnic group that has a majority of the population.
But those do have majority minority was the point that Board Member Jackson was trying to make.
Correct.
Majority.
You include all the minorities.
Yeah,
That's
minority.
that's how I take it,
Correct.
right?
Okay. But we can't say that there are 5 Hispanic majority. I mean, if we follow a more clarified definition of majority.
That's correct.
So I'll just say, this has been quite the learning curve. I want to reiterate that we are a nonpartisan entity, and yet this redistricting process was led by very sophisticated and expert, I would grant, expert New Mexico GOP operatives. I find it folly that a former chief of staff of the Susana Martinez administration and his deputy chief of staff not only participated, but headed the committee. When I elected, or when I appointed my community member, had I known that we were going to bring in heavy hitters, it was just an unfair process to put at least 3 appointed committee members on the committee. And frankly, I mean, in reflecting on the process, I guess I would ask that the district revisit standard operating procedures for this process. I had it in my head, a process that was going to be, that would play out naively so, that would play out something along the lines of having a public involvement that mirrored our congressional and city, I believe it was a city council effort. And that's, in retrospect, I realized that there was no way that was going to happen with an October convening of the committee. Other districts, large districts, started back in February and March. And I think that is more appropriate. And they didn't vote until June or July. And that gave time for this incredible learning curve. Because there are questions, a ton of questions. And once you get online and you start manipulating precincts and boundaries, you start to realize how easy it is to influence and bring to bear a political point of view, which is inevitable. But I think our process could have, or our process suffered from a lack of nuanced conversation and challenging one another. And what we end up with is a very deliberate agenda that it will, my fear is that it will end up disadvantaging and disenfranchising our most vulnerable kids. And so that is, again, I find it disingenuous to say that this process was independent and transparent. That committee was a shadow committee of who we are. We're a divided board. They were a divided committee, and we should have mitigated that. And that's all I'm going to say.
Any other comments? Go ahead, board member. Gonzalez.
So, Mr. Sharp, were all redistricting principles met in creating these maps, maps E2, E3, all of them?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. The other question is when you are, looking at, I know my district and I think Member Tapia Romero's is they're growing districts just based on building permits. So we know that. So when you're redistricting, aren't you trying to, when you're looking at communities that are growing, that you're trying to undershoot if you're growing? So in time, everything is equalized.
It's not something that we're trying to do. That's not necessarily a goal that has to be taken into account. In our opinion, it follows under kind of that broad category of communities of interest. It's not necessarily required by those 4 equal population, voting rights, compactness, contiguity. It's just another factor that you could take into account if you so choose.
Okay. And so when you're talking about basically the whole point of redistricting is just trying to adjust districts to the population. That's what you're trying to accomplish using all the principles of redistricting.
Right.
Okay. And then just a question, I don't, and I could maybe not know this. Were there like any legal challenges at the, congressional level, state level, county, city, school board, challenging anything as it concerns an undercount? Were there any legal challenges?
To my knowledge, none have been brought concerning the 2020 census and the results that were reported.
Okay, and then this probably would go to Superintendent Elder. APS could have mounted a legal challenge if we thought there was an undercount, which we always know New Mexico always undercounts. Did APS mount any kind of a legal challenge as it concerns undercount?
Well, I wasn't superintendent then, but I don't believe so, no.
Okay. I think that's it. But when we're looking at the districts, and I'm obviously a woman of color, when we're looking at it and we're talking about a majority minority, when we are looking at 5 of those 7 districts, they truly are, when you are not just taking into consideration, we can't just think about one population, we have to think about our Black population, our Asian population, our Native population. 5 of the 7 are minority majority. Thank you, Mr. Sharp.
Thank you.
I want to jump in because yes, if we are going to use the 2020 census numbers as they stand, then it is a conscious choice. It is not a requirement of the Voting Rights Act or of any other process for redistricting. It is a clear and conscious choice on the part of this board to put the majority of influence into certain neighborhoods at the expense of other neighborhoods. If we use population as counted solely by the census, then there is absolutely no reason. And some of the projections from the city are saying, some of our growth projections may not quite match out what some people are speculating. It is based on speculation that there will be the degree of growth on the west side. And it is a conscious decision by this board to accept these numbers. And again, by the count of what is spelled out, in the Voting Rights Act, looking at the population, total population of Albuquerque, there should be 3 majority Hispanic districts. There should be at least 1 more additional majority minority district. And the way it is configured, and it's not just a matter of ethnicity and race, it is also a matter of income. When you put the income maps on top of those, there's no question but what districts 4, 1, and 5 are packed with certain parts of our community. And the result of that is that districts 2, 7, 6 in particular become weighted much more white, much more affluent. And so taking that in mind, when we move forward and start talking about where are we going to build schools, where are we going to remodel schools, what schools are going to get closed, what schools are we going to say, oh, they're not up to standard, what schools are we going to close, what neighborhoods and communities are going to be impacted by that? And believe me, I'm not the only sole person who will be watching that carefully as we move forward as a board. There is no question but what we need to build additional schools on the west side. No one is denying that. And APS, regardless of who has sat at this dais, has always recognized that, has always said that we will put the needs of the whole above the needs of any particular district. And I think we can prove that as we look at where capital outlay has been, as we look at what kinds of investment. But believe me, based on this redistricting, I am really uncomfortable that I can say with the same fervor that that will be the case. And I'm not the only person in the community who will be watching that.
Board Member Tapia Romero.
Thank you. I think I want to add some clarity to some of the numbers that were thrown out there because I believe there's a lot of assumptions and speculation as to the way the process took place. And to reiterate, when we chose our committee members, all of us chose people that we thought would be able to represent our districts appropriately and who had the knowledge. In no way, in my opinion, was this ever partisan. And for that to be assumed and spoken as if we're doing something unethical, I'm flabbergasted by it because now we've changed a whole process of the way it was intended to do to now make it for our own personal gain and interest. And I will do everything in my power to speak up against that. This committee voted on a 6-1 for the EMAPs. There wasn't solid division down the line. It was a 6-1 vote. When I look at our populations, when we look across this board and seeing that there's 5 out of the 7 of us that represent the minority vote, we will continue to do so. I will not just sit here quietly and say, now we've turned this into Susana Martinez's crowd and people who's going to vote for her. I'm sorry, it's a bunch of BS. And maybe I don't have a lot of the verbiage that we speak at so eloquently. I will just speak to you off the cuff and tell you, I am not here to represent a board or represent committees that are going to be unethical or that are not going to follow the standards of the law and actually depend on our resources, the professionals, the people who have experience in these to guide us the way we need to. We actually vetted this process the way we needed to. We provided several opportunities to have community input and have everybody come to the table. And now to have the opposite assumed, I feel like I have the right to be able to say, for me in my district and my representative, that was not the case. And I know several other people who represented those committees, and I could speak for them as well. And they did their due diligence, they did their homework, they vetted these communities the best that they can, and to do it legally, to do it ethically. And I will stand by these maps. When we compare maps H and E,
the minority vote is not that different when we're comparing each district. You know, and overall, I look forward to making sure that all of our voices are heard, but I will not stand by and make this a partisan issue when it was never a partisan issue to begin with. When I'm seeing text messages going out from other partisan groups trying to rally everybody, then I'm like, heck, it did become partisan. And that's not right. You know, I'm confident I could represent my district the way I need to, the way I can have my community voice be heard. And I believe all 7 of us feel the same, and we will continue to do so with the new maps. But I won't let this turn into a skeptical of what it should be. And we will focus on student outcomes. We will focus on what our goals need to be going forward. And I won't let other people assume otherwise or be able to speak on our behalf that we did something in any sort that did represent unethical methods in the way these maps were developed. So I'm happy to hear that there was a motion and there was a second, and I look forward to voting.
Thank you. I'll just close by saying that this was a very complicated process. And as what I understand, and I've looked at, had a chance to talk with other school districts that are going through this and other community members, it's very complex and it's really hard. This is probably one of the hardest things that elected bodies have to do. So, and I don't want it to divide us, because I pretty much did the same thing that Board Member Jackson did. I looked through the numbers and saying, like, where do we have like some majority, where do we have majority, near majority, super majority, and looked at that. And I know that from our old maps, it pretty much mirrored what we had previously. Am I correct, Mr. Sharp?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So in previously, we always had 2 super majorities, and then we had the others that were just nearing majority. The other thing that I just want to say too is running for school board members, and anybody out there who's listening, when you run for a school board, you do not run as an RRD. You cannot. And it's unfortunate because, yes, I mean, am I still a political person? Absolutely. Is Peggy still political? Is everybody political? We are. We can't not separate ourselves from that. But the thing is that when you run for school board, you run as a nonpartisan member, and you have to be committed to that, because we represent all of the students in our district, and we have to figure out how we do that. We have to do it well. And it's the hardest thing that we have to do. And I just want to respectfully disagree too, that on the split votes in the districts that we last had, where it was very split in the districts, we also had too many candidates running. When you have a lot of candidates running, you're not going to have a super majority for one person over the other. I love it that we can run as many candidates as we want to have, because the best person should win. And that's what happens. It's tough to get your name out there. It's tough to campaign, because you're campaigning on the issues that you believe in around education. And so if you're running against 3 or 4 other people in that, you're not going to have a super majority who's going to vote for you. You're going to get the people that are going to vote for you because you've done either a really solid job of going out there and campaigning around the issues that are important and getting people to support you. So I just want to state that as well. So I know we've had, in some cases across the state, board members in a lot of places in our state go unopposed, because there isn't anybody else that wants to run against a candidate that they believe is a good candidate and is representing the district well. We haven't had that happen in New Mexico, here in Albuquerque, in a while, but we could. And that's one of the issues that could also happen. And that happens when a candidate has done a really good job of really presenting themselves from that nonpartisan perspective of all the issues that we're trying to do. There is a motion on the table, and I know that I agree with Board Member Tapia Romero that all the maps that were voted, that were put forward, E2 and E3, were voted on a 6-1. There were several people that were in there. They had an opportunity to express their concerns. Absolutely a learning opportunity for all of us on this board, because the complexity of who to select to be on this committee is something that I think is a good lesson learned. as we move forward, because I think it was a lot to ask from the individuals that were part of that, maybe didn't feel as comfortable asking questions or doing the homework because it was hard. But there, I will say that every person on that committee did their absolute best. I believe every person on that committee gave their heart, their soul. They were committed to looking at the maps. I saw them rolling up their shirt sleeves, having good conversations. I also agree with Board Member Dominguez. APS needs to have an SOP on this so that we have an earlier start to the process and we're not just kind of doing it at the end of the process or at the end of the year. But I do want to thank the committee for their effort and their work on this. I also want to thank all of the board members who I know have done and have dug in. I appreciate Board Member Peterson for bringing up all the concerns. I did look at all of her concerns. I studied some additional maps, studied some additional things. I've asked more questions. I've had to learn a whole lot more through the process in doing this. So I also know that everybody on this committee or on this board has also done their homework as well and taking into account the things that we need to look for. So what I'm going to just do is we've got a motion and we've got a second on the table, and Dr. Albright, not Miss Albright, Dr. Albright, I'd like to call for a roll call, please.
Yes. Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
No.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
No.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. All right, so we're going to move on to our next item, which is going to be an update. We're going to go ahead and jump into the update on the community listening sessions and the next steps in the continuation of the student outcomes focused governance. This is just a discussion item. Ashley Paz from the Council of Great City Schools is going to be joining me tonight on this conversation. And so Ashley, I'm going to turn it over to you because you've got some good information for the board, and then we'll talk about our next steps and where we are.
Yes, great. Thank you so much, President Montoya Cordova and Superintendent Elder and Board of Education for Albuquerque Public Schools. So in September, the Board of Education and several members of your district's leadership team received training from myself and a colleague, AJ Crable, to become more effective at creating the conditions for improved student outcomes across Albuquerque Public Schools. This framework is called Student Outcomes Focused Governance, and it centers the mindset that school districts exist to improve student outcomes. So at your next meeting, you adopted a timeline that really focused a sense of urgency around the first step that you have to take, which is changing the way that you work with the community, creating improvements in the way that you collaborate with the community and really seek to understand the vision that they have for improved student outcomes and the values that they feel should be protected along the way as you seek to improve those student outcomes. So I would like to start by extending a moment of gratitude to Superintendent Elder and all of the faculty members who answered the call to plan and coordinate public meetings for the board to host these conversations with the community that hosted a two-way flow of information. They, in collaboration with you, the board, have done an incredible amount of work in a very small amount of time. You have received a lot of really great feedback as you seek to understand really what the vision is of your community and what their values are. So far, you've had 5 district-wide meetings, 3 of these, 3 additional meetings, which have been tailored to a unique approach for communities that really require a different way of communicating, where there are different cultural norms and interpretation accommodations that are needed. You also have had a couple of specialized meetings for students and the tribal council, and you have each individually, or not individually, you've been going out in pairs to meet with community partners with a shared script and a common voice so that you're truly representing the voice of the board versus individual board members. So far, you have received over 13 or almost 1,300 responses. And I'm going to tell you all about those responses in just a little bit. Before I do that, President Montoya Cordova, would you like to give your opportunities or your colleagues an opportunity to share some of the highlights that they have taken away from the engagement sessions that they've hosted?
I would love to do that. So we'll keep it really brief because we're going to go through some other items. But I mean, I would just like to ask each of the board members if you could share at least one highlight from, you know, something that stood out for you with all of the engagement that we've done thus far that stands out for you. And I'll start over here with you, Board Member Dominguez.
I'm always heartened when I hear from newcomer and South Valley immigrant communities that they want their children to learn as much as possible to command language, skills, but with the purpose of coming back to the community and with passion and giving back to their communities. So I loved it. I loved hearing that. And the passion is more important than money, is what a newcomer said at that meeting.
I think mine was just getting the thank yous from family members that they actually had an opportunity to talk to board members. And many of them had never even met their board member before. And to have us in their schools and, you know, being relatable and having that two-way conversation with them. I think that was my biggest highlight of it. And that's what makes our job fun.
Absolutely. Board Member Jackson.
Oh gosh. I think I have been really in surprise, I guess I shouldn't say surprised, but I've really enjoyed hearing that no matter where we are in the city, some of the themes that are coming back are very similar. I think I went in thinking that the themes coming back would be different, and they're not. And so I've been really pleasantly, I've really enjoyed hearing that we are more together than we think we are.
Board Member Mueller-Aragon.
Well, always to me, what the highlight always is the kids. I mean, I know we had a couple where we had at Cibola, a group of students that were there and gave their input. And I think we need to listen a lot more to them because they're the ones that are in the classroom. And also when we did the Spanish session at Albuquerque High, and we had a big group of students, and what they have to say, they are wise beyond their years. And everyone also speaking to what Member Jackson said, everybody wants their children to grow up and be successful, and they want them to be prepared academically for college, career, whatever they decide to do. And it was good to hear that across the entire city.
Board Member Peterson.
Yeah, and I think one of the commonalities that really came through is over and over again, I heard people talk about wanting kids to come out with this sense of giving back to the community and being part of the whole community. And that was echoed through, I was at 5 of the 6 sessions, and I heard that at every single one.
Board Member Gonzalez.
Just ditto on everything everyone else said. I think just the appreciation that people have for having their voice heard and having the opportunity to share, just being asked their perspective, their opinion really matters a lot. And so that just is an important reminder about how much we need to continue to do that.
Yes. And I will just echo the same things. The things that I walked away with was the thank you at the end of and also a reminder, are you going to do this again? We really want to be able to hear from you again. I got a lot of thank yous also. Ashley, you need to know this part too, is a lot of thank yous on the process, that it was, how we had the small group discussions and that ability to do that because there was this opportunity for them to hear each other as well. And when they were sitting at tables, maybe with individuals that they wouldn't normally be engaged with. Having that pleasant surprise too, as Board Member Jackson saying, is like how similar we are in a lot of areas and a lot of the thinking. So there was a lot of like, thank you for the process too, because that was really helpful. And so continue on, because you're going to share some data with us. We're really excited, or some information of what we've gleaned so far.
Yes, yes. Okay.
From our survey. Yeah.
So thank you all for sharing those experiences. I think that everything that you just highlighted is really important to why this process exists. Taking people out of their districts where they get elected. I know you just had a really important conversation about this. It's getting people out of their political boundaries, out of the schools that they attend, out of their neighborhoods, and literally around the table to have a conversation about the values, especially values for children and student learning, can be truly transformational. And so I want to highlight that the student outcomes focused governance framework is a continuous improvement model. It's really important to think about continuous improvement, that it starts with the expectation that the first time you do anything is not going to be perfect. You're going to come out of the gate a little bit clumsy. You're going to fumble over yourselves. There's always going to be room for improvement. And this, just like any other process, is implemented by humans, and humans are going to always have room to do things better. So in that vein, just think about all of the times that we've had the debriefing conversations, which I've really enjoyed being able to have these conversations with you about just asking the question, what worked and what didn't work? And again, acknowledging your staff and how responsive they have been to that feedback, and how after every single session, they have made course corrections so that you really do have real-time improvements happening, so that the very first session that you hold is going to be, very different from the last one. You just learn so much, even across the span of 5 or 6 meetings. So to that end, let's get into the data. So you had, I'm really going to talk about 7 meetings, just from a high level overview. So, and this is not in the order that the meetings were had, but I want to talk about which ones were held and how many people attended. So I have, for the in-person sessions, we just have data on the number of people who showed up. We didn't want to overwhelm them with any kind of demographic data getting in. We just didn't want to overwhelm them with asking a lot of questions, because we really wanted them to focus on the 3 big questions that were asked. But we do have the overall numbers. So at Cibola High School, there were 75 families in attendance, plus 15 staff members who helped provide support for facilitating the meetings, and 15 students who also attended and helped. Del Norte was a very specific session that was held for the newcomer community, and there's a lot of praise to be thrown out for that meeting, how it was coordinated, and for your faculty for really putting a lot of deliberate effort into making that successful. So there were 35 participants who attended, with 15 staff members and 12 students. At Jefferson, this is Jefferson Middle School, 80 participants attended with 20 staff members and 10 students. Albuquerque High School had a session that was completely hosted, or it was completely delivered in Spanish for native Spanish speakers. And shout out to Peggy and Josefina for facilitating that and flexing their skills for their community. You had 30 participants attend that one, with 15 staff members and 12 students. Rio Grande High School was the first meeting that you held, and there were over 100 participants present with 20 staff members to support and 15 students that provided help as well. And then at El Dorado, there were 80 participants with 20 staff members and 15 students. And then another special meeting was held with the Super SAC that was all just students. And there were 25 students who attended and participated and provided responses for that. So these are really, really good numbers. I can't stress that enough. I've done a lot of these sessions over a lot of big districts like Albuquerque, and I can't say that I've ever attended one that had 100 people present. So I need to check with my colleagues, but you may have a record there.
You know, and I was so worried, if you all remember, because it was the first one and I was like, oh, it's going to be hard. But I remember that night because Rio Grande had to pull extra tables because we had more people show up than we had planned for. So yay us.
Yes. So you also have an online survey. So as you've been going out into the sessions, into the meetings hosted by your community partners, you've been encouraging people to go online. There's a survey that is linked on the homepage of the Albuquerque website, or the APS website, I'm sorry. And you have gotten a lot of responses from that as well. Currently over 1,300, exactly 1,278 survey responses from that. And so I do have specific demographic data for the people who have, or for the survey respondents. And this is, and just so you know, I'm going to share the information here, but I also have a memo to the board that I will send out as well, so you have it all in writing. So we want to make sure that as you go out and do this work, that you are talking to a statistically relevant number of people. You have achieved your minimum number for that, which was around 600. You've over doubled it, so congratulations. So statistical relevance on the size of respondents is important. It's also critical that you ensure that you are talking to people that are representative of the demographics of the district. So as you, if you remember when we very first started this process, I had one-on-one sessions with each of you, and I asked you a couple of questions about who you wanted to make sure that that we definitely heard from. And the big responses were you wanted to hear from parents, you wanted to hear from teachers. There was a clear request for that a special outreach be made to the special education community, and that you wanted to hear business community respondents. And then I think I'm pretty sure it was Board Member Peterson who said, don't just talk to teachers when you're talking to staff, also make sure you're including our classified staff. So we made sure that we measured the number of, or gave people the opportunity to self-identify within each of those relational areas with the district. So as of right now, you have received responses from over 66%. So over 66% of your respondents were parents. 25% of your respondents were specifically special education parents. 31% of your respondents are educators. So we broke out your staff by asking them to, so asking if they were educators or classified staff. So 31% of respondents were specifically educators, and 5.6% were classified employees. And then you have the tribal community, which is 1.5% on the survey. I want to remind you that you also have had a specific in-person session with the tribal community as well. And then 3.2% were business partners, And 29% were just community members at large who didn't fall into any of those categories. And to be clear, those are not going to add up to 100% if you're trying to do the math. You have some people are business partners and parents, or tribal leaders or from the tribal community, and business partners and parents and special education parents. So you're going to have more than 100% if you add all of those up. But those are the percentages of the total respondents that fall within each category. So overall, the demographics of the people who responded, and I'm going to go in order of response size. So 41.1% self-identified as white or Caucasian, 32.2% identified as Hispanic or Latino, 8.5% were 2 or more races, 6.3% identified as other, another 6.3% preferred not to answer, and then 2.6% were Native American, 1.4% were Asian, and 1.6% were Black or African American. And so I want to be clear, so when we compare whether or not this is a reflective or representative sample of your district at whole, we're not looking at the demographics of the students in your district. We're looking at the demographics of the community, the entire APS community. So that's going to include parents, business leaders, and just neighbors, people who don't have kids but really care about the outcomes for APS because they want to live in an educated society. So the most recent census results show that your Hispanic or Latino population in the city of Albuquerque is 49.2%, and your white or Caucasian population is 38.3%. And then 2 or more races is 9.2%. And then everyone else is below 5%. They kind of have a lot of them lumped together, but Black or African American residents of Albuquerque make up 3.1% of the population, and American Indian or Alaskan Native are 4.5%, and the Asian population is 3% of the city. So before I move on, does anyone have any questions about these percentages?
I just have a quick question. So I just sort of take note. We're just having redistricting conversations. So it's a little bit hot, big on my brain, but other districts that have done that, do they, because our Latino representation in this was actually below the average, right? It's only at 32.2% as a respondent. Did other school districts, do they work to like sort of eke that up a little bit, or is that just, because I wonder if there's like, barriers, challenges. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, so, and this is actually the question that, so I want to put this question on the table, and that's, does the board feel like this is a sufficient response rate based on the demographics of the district or of the people who live within the district? So I will say that most of the time, Hispanic or Latino population is usually one of the lowest response rates that we get. Albuquerque is special because Albuquerque has a larger Latino population or Hispanic population than a lot of the urban districts in America. You have several in Florida and California and here in Texas that are equivalent. Actually, where I'm located in Fort Worth is pretty much, our demographics are very, very similar to those in Albuquerque. And so when I compare your results to, and I haven't sat down and done like a side-by-side comparison, but this is the one area that boards usually do come back and say, okay, we need to do some kind of targeted communication, some kind, like you may choose to do a specific outreach to the community, which you've already done that when you had the Spanish, you had a session that was completely in Spanish. And again, I don't have the demographics from the in-person sessions, but I know that they are, from the conversations that I've had with your administration, it's not too far off from the demographics that the survey results have given. So really you can choose to do a targeted meeting. You can do targeted, some kind of targeted communication or special last minute plea to community organizers who are already active in the Hispanic or Latino or Chicano community there, or I should say communities in Albuquerque. It's really a matter of what the board wishes to do.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one quick question? Do we have any way of breaking down either socioeconomic level of the respondents or looking at what area from the city they reside in?
We don't. That's information that we would have needed to collect in advance, or when they were responding to the surveys, and because of the number of meetings that you were having and not wanting to overwhelm the community with having to answer a lot of questions. And, the concept of survey fatigue has been discussed a lot in these. It was more important to focus on the racial and ethnic demographics versus the socioeconomic status. And I can tell you that from prior experiences that I've had working with districts, there usually isn't, when you look at the responses based on socioeconomic status, it really doesn't differ from, people who are in the, the 1%. Actually, I don't know that we've ever had a 1% respond, but people who would be considered living below the poverty line or socioeconomically disadvantaged typically don't respond any differently. Everybody wants they have the same values and the same vision for their kids. And so I think that the more important thing for this board at the time was to focus on making sure that the racial and ethnic demographics were consistent with the district at large.
I can appreciate that, although I do think that the communities that are economically stressed also tend to respond less frequently. And that it might be when we try to figure out additional outreach, we may want to target like particular school communities that we can get more input from. Is the online survey still open? And if so, for how much longer?
So it initially was scheduled to close on Friday, so 11:59 on Friday. One of the recommendations that I have for the board is to actually extend it until December 16th. That is your last day of classes. That will give you it'll create a little more space so that you can do that targeted outreach and get the additional responses if you so choose.
And are we going to get to next steps?
Yes. So Ashley has like some really good stuff that I want her to talk about too, because it's the summary of what from the survey in terms of like, what are those top areas? So that's where we'll get to next.
Yeah, let's get into it. So I wanted to share some of the most frequent responses that have come up. And I want to be clear, these are going to be very general. They're lumped into categories. If I give specifics about, this person said said this, or well, I can't tell you what individual said because I don't know myself. They're all anonymous. But we don't want to get into the details of what is being said because the survey is still open and we don't want to influence potential responses from that aspect. But just from a high level, your top frequency responses that have come back as it relates to the vision. This is the question that was asked: what should APS students know or be able to do? What we're getting to is what is the knowledge and the skills that people think that students need to have during their time in APS. Those have been focused on English language arts. That's any response related to reading, writing, and effective communication skills. There's also soft skills. That's responses related to a student's ability to perform soft skills as a whole, or where they may have mentioned specific soft skills like having confidence or self-management or empathy or managing of their time. But with that said, most of the responses have been the literal word soft skills. There's also post-secondary readiness. This is responses related to knowledge or skills for entering the workforce, job preparation for college, job skills, trades, CTE courses, any kind of post-secondary readiness or preparation for success after high school. And then there's also mathematics. These are responses related to mathematics, financial management, financial literacy, and so on and so forth. And then you've got science. These are going to be responses related to the scientific fields. And really a lot of the responses were just science. But some went into like STEM or specific STEM related categories. And then there's also fine arts, which is responses related to knowledge or skills within the fine arts domain. Again, most of these responses just list fine arts instead of getting into a category more specific within fine arts. So you didn't hear as much like being able to paint or being able to perform. Just fine arts is kind of the overall thing. So that's the vision. And those are in no particular order. I'm not sharing what is most common. I'm not sharing what is coming up the most. Those are just the top, let's see, those are the top 6 most frequent responses that are coming back. And inside of that question, what should APS students know or be able to do? And then the next question is getting at the values that your community holds. We've tried to understand these by asking the question, what should APS not do or stop doing as they pursue improved student outcomes? There are a lot more of these. And so I really stuck to the top 10. And again, these are in no particular order. These are focused on instruction and curriculum quality. That's any responses related to increasing the quality of instructors, materials, curriculum, quality, strategies related to instruction and curriculum. So that's just kind of a high level category. The next is supporting teachers. This is all responses related to supporting teachers through and their time, their expertise, and their professional judgment. There's also instruction time. This is any response related to issues that reduce the amount of time that students would receive quality instruction. A lot of these values are based around time spent on testing. And this is because the whole idea is that testing takes away from instruction time. So the next is academic rigor and high expectations for all students. These are any responses related to holding students to high standards or providing rigorous academic frameworks, regardless of their race, their class, their ethnicity, or their economic background. Then we have decision quality. These are responses related to issues that impact the district's decision-making capacity. This includes school size, district size, the capacity of administration, the effectiveness of implementation efforts, research-based decision-making, strategic management, kind of in that realm. And then we've got student voice and accountability. These are responses that are related to the board or the district receiving student input, giving students a voice in their education, and holding students accountable for their for discipline issues, chronic absenteeism, and for the academics and their own student outcomes. Next, we have quality electives and extracurricular options. These are any responses related to access to or improving the quality or effectiveness of electives and or after-school enrichment. And the next is individual instruction. These are going to be responses related to issues that impact the effectiveness or access to individualized or differentiated instruction. This includes a lot of responses about class size. And the next is equitable access. This is any responses that relate to how students access the resources or programs and the disparities that historically exist for students based on their zip code, their economic status, or their physical or mental ability. And then finally, I've labeled the final category as academic focus. These are all responses related to a desire to not focus on issues related to non-academic levers. This may include, but is not limited to, issues related to political ideology. And this is on both sides of the fences. There were plenty of people on both sides saying, don't bring politics into our schools. So those we've identified as focusing on academics. And that is, those are the top. So do you have any questions about the categories or the frequency that we received or anything else related to the survey or your community engagement efforts?
And as she mentioned, we're gonna have a memo, so you guys will have all of this. You don't have to take copious notes because it's gonna come, I promise, I know. But any questions up to this point? No, I just really appreciate, because she's culling through all of this stuff and having to like categorize it, and thank God Ashley is there to do it. It's not something that's dumped on the administration to do, because I think it's a lot of work. So I know for us, so this is the work that Ashley's doing. She still has to take all of the information from the in-person sessions. So this doesn't even include what we did through those engagement sessions, like all those sticky notes. This is just from the survey. Yeah, just the survey. So she's still working through all of that. So, and I think what's really striking to me is like the survey, the online survey, and how much, how similar it is to what we heard in the in-person session. So I don't know if it's going to change a whole lot of stuff, but I think it helps us to just kind of hear what the major themes are, things that were coming out in that survey results. Go ahead.
A question on the survey. Is it possible to know if any of the people who submitted the survey also attended an in-person?
No, that was actually a question that I initially had on there, but we cut that question just for sake of not having a survey that was too long, because there are lots of other surveys going out within a short time frame. So we really wanted to keep it as easy as possible for people.
Okay.
But I like where you're going.
But don't we have like a mechanism where you can add more? I mean, do we track that? Because at the end of the community engagement, we say something like, if you want to add comments, you can go online and
so all we've done is we told the community that if you felt like you didn't have enough opportunity, to just go to the survey. It's just the survey again.
Okay.
So it's not like and something else, but it's just, you can still go back to the survey and still submit additional information if they felt like during the session, they forgot to say something and they want to say it. So it's just additional input.
And there are instructions on the survey that say if you're coming back to add something from a previous response or after a session, then just hit it. I think it says to just type in pass for everything until you get to the final question, which is, would you like to add anything? And I have not actually seen any responses that are just passes all the way through.
Oh, good. Okay.
Good. So Ashley, I have a quick question. Obviously this is all public because you have just said this, but I like to share, at least through my social media, like updates on the process. But I also do not want to taint any of the potential information that's coming in from this point forward. So would you recommend, is it okay if I share some of this, like this top line, what vision and values have come in, or do you suggest that we just keep it as a discussion here and so that the community still feels as though they're not being led as to what their response should be?
So I would encourage you, everything that I have shared is now public record. I'll share all of this with you in an email that will also be public record. So it's out there. And that's why I've shared things in the way that I have shared them. And I'm not saying this is the top response or anything like that. I do think that you should exercise caution when, encouraging people through social media or through emails, in the way that you share that information. What you don't want is to create the implication that you're encouraging people to respond a certain way, or we definitely want to make sure we have a representative voice of your community. So, but you can't assume that all Hispanic people think alike and that they're all going to have a certain type of perspective, because that is not the case. And this survey, you will receive the raw, you'll have a file with the raw data. So any of you are welcome to go look through it. It's going to be a lot, but I think that it's just a show of, it's just important to be cautious of creating the perception that any single board member is trying to influence the outcome of the survey, which I don't think that's what you've referred to, but it's just something to be mindful of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I would like as many people as possible to fill out the survey, but I just like to keep them updated. But I don't know. This is really cool information to have. So I just wanted to bring that up. So thank you.
Thank you.
Comments on this so far? No, so we can go into what our next steps are going to be.
I have a clarification.
Because remember, we still have a whole section to do after
I've
this.
got demographics for Fort Worth is 35% and for Albuquerque 49%.
Oh, thank you.
On the Hispanic.
I actually haven't looked up at Fort Worth's demographics since the last census report was released, because I was off the board at that point and I didn't want to know.
So I do want to move us along through this, because this was intended as a discussion just to kind of give us an update of where we are. So the next steps for us, and I kind of wrote some notes down for myself and what we've got going on. So Ashley, superintendent, and I are actually meeting tomorrow because we've got to talk about starting to draft some draft goals and some draft interim goals that we'll start entertaining as when we come together. So that's kind of like a next big step for us. And we're going to be talking about how that process is going to look and how we're going to get to that. The other thing that I wanted to note is that we also have one additional upcoming session that board member Gonzalez and I are going to do, and that's with special ed parents engagement groups. So we're going to add another group into this, even though I was so pleasantly surprised to hear that even with the demographics that we had a good representation of special ed parents. But I think this will be an opportunity to really just be engaged with them in their, on their like issues and with that group. So we've got that coming up on the 13th. And we're really, I pushed really hard for that meeting. So I know I really wanted to get that one in. So that's yes,
Would you mind sharing so that some of us could hear? listen,
sure. You can
even if we're
actually
not-
attend. It's going to
even if
be,
we're Not doing it.
yeah, it's going to
listening
be,
would booth.
we're going to be here on, at City Center, and it's going to be from 6 to 8. And I'll have Dr. Albright will get us that information of where exactly it's going to be. But we don't anticipate it being a big group. It'll probably be a smaller group. So we'll get that out to you. And we're just using that as not as like a direct engagement, but an outreach session. So we'll have that. Let me look for my other notes here really quick. I am using a computer, which is like driving me insane.
While you're looking, I want to add, so, you've absolutely received a bigger response from the special education parent community than the number of special education students in Albuquerque or APS. That said, it is never a bad idea to overrepresent in your results historically underserved voices. So if anything, it's always going to be better to defer on the higher side of overrepresenting the underrepresented, if that makes sense.
Okay. So just another rundown through what our timeline is. As I mentioned, we have a meeting tomorrow that we're going to be going over some of our next steps. The online survey, we'd like to keep it open until December 16th because we thought that would be best to just, we can continue to get the input through that date. Ashley is going to prepare a report and work with the administration on the presentation for the board based on the results of the community conversations and the survey. So that will be coming to a future board meeting. And that future board meeting, if you remember, the administration will present to the board at the special board meeting workshop at 5 p.m. on January the 11th. And that's where we're going to actually go over. It's just going to be a workshop on just that. We're not having anything else. It is a workshop on student outcomes focused governance. And the goal on that is really to settle in on our draft goals and guardrails. We'll articulate that. They'll go out, they'll be announced, they'll be open, and then we can get community input as they're posted out. Decided, and this is kind of a decision I made, decided not to do this or to post these over the holidays. Nobody's going to look at them. So we're gonna do the hard work on the 11th. We'll come, we'll do that. We'll put them out, we'll post them. Hopefully our newspaper will help us to also do something that maybe we could get some channels out there, but hey, they're out, they're posted. We want input. You want some guidance on that. And then at our regular meeting, the following week on January 18th, we're going to actually vote on those goals and guardrails. And so the whole purpose here is for us to really just, and then I just want to remind the board, go back and look at your student outcomes focused manual on the pages 2 and 3 in terms of goals and guardrails, in terms of like how they're made up, what they should look like. Do a little homework, go and look at that, sort of read up on that. Maybe start to draft some in your mind in terms of what that looked like. And then when we come together on the 11th, let's see how close we are, right? In terms of this, you're going to get these notes from Ashley. Obviously, we're still going to have some additional input and pieces that are going to go around the community conversations, but I think we've all been in those community conversations and we've listened in too. So it's an opportunity for us to also sort of get our hands dirty on that and start to think about what that will look like. And so that's the process of where we are and where we're headed, and we will meet our goal of having these done by January 18th. So that was my goal, is that we could get it and we could actually meet our goal of getting this all done, which will be great for the superintendent and the staff, because I think, as you heard, the attuned update, they're waiting on us for that part, but we're in such a good place with these 2 phases on these. This is one project with 2 phases. We've got this part with the board and then the part with attuned, but it's going to all start to come together. And I think we'll start to see in the second semester through the end of the fiscal year that aligning all of this, the work with the strategic plan, but also starting to align it and how our thinking is going to be around budget decisions that we're going to make. So we're in a really good spot, and I just want to congratulate the staff and thank Superintendent Elder too for all the work that the staff has done to get us to this point. And just really want to thank the community too for showing up and coming into those conversations with us, because that's really been, that's been an important process for us. And one I hope that we keep as a board. I think it's a value that we should continue to have, is to be in continuous conversation with the community so that we can make sure as we're going through and we're starting to monitor those, how we're doing with that. And that's the whole purpose of the process and the exercise. It wasn't a one and done, but it's really an opportunity for us to continue to stay in communication with the community as we move forward. So thank you, Ashley, for your time and for your wonderful work. Look forward to the memo. I got a chance to see things early, so I know it makes a whole lot more sense when you see it in writing, but it'll be nice that we have that. So I appreciate the work that you've done on that, Ashley. Thank you so much. All right.
Question.
Yes. Yes.
So one of the things that Ms. Paz put on the table is whether we wanted to do any additional
I forgot.
outreach, any final push to any groups that this board feels may be underrepresented in the data. And I think to her point, her final point around perhaps seeking overrepresentation of historically underrepresented groups, I wanted to open up that conversation and see if there are any particular groups that this board would like to reach out to. I was looking at I have up right now
I have it up too.
community outreach spreadsheet, and I don't know how updated it is. So
I
there's-
just went in today and I know I did a lot of updating on it today. Let me see, I'm trying to pull mine up.
Well, I guess my question is, so there's groups like Albuquerque Interfaith, Community School Councils, Families United for Education, Partnership for Community Action, Sin Fronteras, SWAP, OLE, which are groups that may organize these types of populations that we're talking about. And so were they?
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because sorry, I know I was like trying to wrap it up so we can get, but one of the things that we will do, and Ashley had helped us to pull together a letter. And so we will get it out to that. I will get it out through my channels, because this is she had recommended that it come out like from the board chair, so that I'll get that out. If there are specific groups on here, because you're right, I had thought of all the groups that you mentioned, Community Action, Partnership for Action with Adrian Pedrosa, who could also help us in this. But there was some targeted groups that I had on there that I thought I would send out and say, hey, the survey is still open. We really would welcome your membership to come in and to respond to that. So what I would ask the board members, if you could send me who on that list, because you have to also go back and look at this list. Not all of it is complete. And so I might not have contact information so for those that we have immediate contact information, it's easy for me to send it out and I can get the help on that with board staff. But if it's not there, then I'm going to have to be like digging and looking, and that makes it a lot harder. So as board members, if you've got some good information to add to that in terms of a contact, just send it over to me and I'll make sure that that list goes out.
And that's on the Google Drive.
Right, it's on the drive.
Well, my question along with that, like I've been going to as many PTA meetings and community school council meetings as I possibly can, and just encouraging people to fill out the online survey, giving a quick overview. So those are like points of contact. There's not really any follow-up with it. Do we have the capacity to do more than that with some groups? Or do we count that as, okay, we've done the outreach and it's done? Because sometimes it's just not being able to coordinate with another board member. So we can't list it as an official listening session, plus the time frame that those organizations have.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm not quite sure what you're asking is like to follow up with them.
Do we want to try to deepen that contact, or do we want to say that this has been our best effort?
I think it's our best effort. I think we're kind of past the listening sessions point because we've done that part. I think now is really pushing through the 16th to get people to the survey so that we can also increase maybe that demographic so that it looks more representative. And I think that's our push. as board members. And so, and I'm glad that Board Member Gonzalez brought that up, because we do have some groups on here that we could do some targeted outreach with, in terms of just saying, hey, we really want to hear you. We really want to make sure that your members or your network, can come in and respond to that survey. But I think that's really that's the best push at this time.
My only other question, and this is something that I've heard from any number of people who have been part of the listening sessions and such, is the comment of what comes next. And after we start developing the goals and guardrails, how do we continue that conversation? What if we develop them and the community goes,
well, let's hope that we don't. I mean, that's the goal. I mean, it's like,
I know it is,
Yeah.
but I think that figuring out ways
Yeah.
that we do continue the conversation.
of course. So if you will recall,
essential.
with the student outcomes focused governance, the next part to this is always the monitoring side of it as well. So it's not like we're just going to do this and we're not going to be here on the dais having that conversation back about how we're monitoring this and where we're going. So the next piece too is part of that monitoring, and built into that monitoring are continued conversations. So it's not going to be over after this point. This was just the first phase for us to get to the discussion around goals and guardrails. And as you recall, we're committed to the Council of Great City Schools for at least 18 months on this process. And they're going to be coaching us through that next phase so that it becomes sort of an iterative process, and we continue to do it as part of our governance as a board. So it's going to be a continuous cycle. So it's just our first step. Okay. All right. Can I move on now? All right, because I do want to get to our last items, because we moved. Now I have to find my agenda here. Okay, so the next items that we have is consideration for approval. And what we've done here is we've pulled out all of the items. So we're going to go through each one individually first. So the first one is approval of the charter renewal with a term of 5 years for the Albuquerque Talent and Development Academy. And yes, we do have our wonderful group here who's going to help us with this. So I know, board members, that there was like several questions that went through on this and several responses. So is there any other discussion, since we have our wonderful experts here with us and we're talking specifically about the Albuquerque Talent and Development Academy? Go ahead, Board Member Dominguez.
So yeah, I'll keep it brief. I'd like to recommend that, and I'm new to this, charters. So I'm concerned. I'm very concerned about what I see in the numbers. Both, well, you all have a supermajority Hispanic population, and your applications and accompanying documents pose some problems. And so, in fact, I think what I did in my comments is I put together both Camino Real and Albuquerque Talent and Development, but I believe you both show bloated administrative costs at the expense of students. And so, because you have such a high number of Hispanic, our most vulnerable kids, I'd like to recommend that the Office of Innovation put this school on I'm forgetting the phrase.
Corrective action.
Corrective action plan. Thank you.
So Dr. Escobedo or Mark Garcia, are there plans with this particular school around the corrective action pieces on the things that need to be corrected on that? Or how would that be handled as part of the 5-year renewal if that goes through?
So good evening, Madam President and members of the board. Sorry, I'm sick. But when we go through our review processes, we visit each school every semester twice. And so we're working with them on improvements. So Lucinda can talk to you about the details. She's here with us, the executive director. But what our work in the renewal is to look at their plan for the next 5 years. Our 7-member review team reads the dozens of pages of documents and meets with the school. And we really feel like they have a solid plan moving forward to correct some of their deficiencies. And so that's kind of the process we do with all the schools.
Well, can I?
Go ahead, yeah.
So Dr. Escobedo, I guess, can you talk a little bit about what that next 5 years might look like? I mean, it is a little shocking to see their proficiency scores. So can you just give the highlights as how they are?
The executive directors, the executive director's on the call as well. And so I'd like her to expand a little bit, but one of the things that they've really implemented this year is their graduate really focus on their graduate profile and getting the students, matriculated through their personal education plan. So Lucinda, do you want to expand? You're muted.
Right. Sorry. Typically our graduation rate, if our students begin with us, typically our graduation rate is 90%. We do have students who do come from, other areas, environmental factors, mental health, social, emotional issues, a lot of anxiety issues. When they leave an APS school, they come to us and they end up performing a little bit better. They feel safer. We feel we have to address their social, emotional, and mental needs before they can actually produce well academically or perform well academically. And we believe that we are achieving that. Mr. Davis is our, data genius. He can, my assistant, he can also address some of the proficiency levels as well, but we do feel that we are moving forward in helping our students be successful.
Oh, okay. Can you give like 3 examples as to how you are helping them to move forward, to be successful? Like with addressing their social emotional needs, what specifically are you doing?
We have what is called a personalized education plan. It is somewhat similar to an IEP. So at our school, all students, that we meet their individual needs. So the PEPs, the personalized education plans, address each student's needs. Each student has a goal similar to an IEP. I was a special education teacher, so we wanted to address something similar to that of students with disabilities, because each student with disabilities have a particular goal and objectives geared towards them. So we created and we actually finalized and improved, in my opinion, and also Mr. Escobedo agreed that we actually improved our personalized education plan. They are monitored, viewed, and discussed monthly with students and staff. There's also a reflection piece in the personalized education plan. And that is one way how we are addressing the needs of our students. We also were funded a Gear Up grant. So we, through Gear Up and AVID strategies, we are also assisting our students within that area as well. We are seeing more students interested in attending college when we have never seen that before. So these past 2 years have been an improvement in actually boosting the students' self-confidence by discussing that they can attend college. They have the abilities, they have the skills to attend college and to boost their academic skills.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Board Member Mueller-Aragon.
So, I mean, I'm very concerned about how you are really preparing them academically, preparing them for college, or preparing them to be career ready. When I'm looking at, and if anybody who knows me knows, I don't say everything is about a test, because it isn't. But I'm looking at the 2022 English SAT scores, and the MET benchmark says 9%. And then the 2022 math SAT scores said the benchmark they met was 0%. But yet you're saying that you're graduating 90% of your students, or, maybe not always, but that's the number that you threw out there. I just am so worried that how can they possibly be ready with these kinds of scores? And then I'm looking, and I did look at all of the ways you wanted to address I think the proficiency rate for math was 2.9%. 14% in science, and 26.6% in reading. And to me, those are not acceptable for any child, because all our children are way more capable, for sure. And there were all these different ways that you said you were going to address those areas. So, I mean, I just want, and I know Member Dominguez and Member Jackson were kind of asking the same question, and I don't think that we've really got an answer to that yet. You can't graduate 90% of your kids with these kind of scores and say that they are really ready academically anyway. They could be in many ways that you've worked on their social emotional health, worked on their anxiety, and that is important to make it out in the world as well. But our kids have to be able to read and do math and do science as well.
Correct, but also COVID did put a damper on our students, on the students.
So I'd like to point out something related to these comments. Yeah, and I don't know if, I know this is not the Montessori of the Rio Grande numbers.
Right.
Function 1000, I'm assuming these are your numbers. They're just, that column is mislabeled, correct? Is that correct? So 30, even though you're in the green in direct instruction, and I'm on page 9 of the agenda packet, digital packet, 37.1% should be in red, because you're below 45%. And that seems to be linked very directly to these low scores. And so I guess a more specific question about corrective actions is that, how are you articulating that, Office of Innovation and school? I mean, how are you have you identified that? What's your plan?
Because we are chartering, Member Dominguez, for 5 years.
Yes, indeed.
5 years.
So Dr. Escobedo or Mark Garcia, any concerns? Or, I mean, I saw that one too, because the direct instruction is only at 37.1%. Student support is only at 2.9%. And yet this is a very high risk population. And what I'm seeing is that there just isn't the investment in the direct instruction or the student supports that you need, or in order to really turn this around. It's like, it seems like the investments in this school are at school administration, central services, maintenance and operations. And I'm just concerned about that, because the direct instruction is not there. And I'm wondering, do you have a teacher shortage as well? Do you have missing staff? How many are you missing, and why do you not? I would assume you don't have a counselor.
Oh, no, we do have a counselor. We did have to conduct a RIF. So there is a shortage this year.
So who did you lay off? What was the RIF?
We actually laid off, let's see, it's a lunch server, a special education teacher, because we did not have the number of special ed students in order to maintain a full special ed education teacher. The percentage of special ed students has dropped.
Okay, still have special ed, you just don't have as
Oh,
many. Okay,
correct.
and you have what, one counselor or how many?
Yes, we have one. Yes, we do have one counselor.
Okay.
Are all your teachers certified? Are they?
Yes, and we have 3 teachers who are certified in, they have a TESOL endorsement. Also, the projected lease assistance will be down due to, it's down to lower enrollment. We are also looking for, purchasing a building in order to utilize our HB 33 and SB 9.
And so
We also have a math interventionist that we were able to hire, and an AVID instructor, which is the salary for the AVID instructor comes from a grant, Gear Up grant.
And just this year, or how long have you had the?
Last year and this year. We just started last year with the AVID, this year with the math interventionist.
Math interventionist this year.
Correct.
Okay, and I guess I'm going right back to why are your administrative costs? What are you paying your principal or the lead?
You want the salary?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to, say the salary?
It's public information.
It is? Okay. My salary is $115.
And, okay, and so do you have an assistant?
Yes.
And what is that salary?
It is about 80.
It's
It's about 80,000.
80.
Yes.
And that's with an enrollment of 150? Is that right?
That's it with the enrollment of, where are we at? 139? Approximately 139.
I can help you budget.
Okay.
So that's problematic for me because, I know that it's not easy to set up a school from the ground up, but we do have examples of that happening. And it's a problem with all of them, frankly, that we pay so much for such a small enrollment. I mean, that is the criticism of charter schools. What principal wouldn't love to have that situation? And granted, I understand that there are startup costs and whatnot, but you're 5 years into this or more, and you're asking for a 5-year renewal. And I want to hear how you're going to bring down your administrative costs and up the direct instruction cost. I mean, you need more instruction, direct instruction. And I'm not hearing that plan. And these are the most vulnerable kids. And I get about that they need a small environment, but is it here? That's the question for me. And I feel the weight of a budget responsibility.
So my question then, either to Dr. Escobedo or to Mr. Garcia, what is if we do a renewal, what's the least we can do? Can we do a year renewal? I don't want us to get caught in when we had this problem where we didn't quite get the legal representation that we needed to tell the board what we needed to do. So I need to know, can we just renew for a year? Is that a possibility to give them a chance to maybe change some of the things that we're bringing up?
Madam President and Member Mueller-Aragon, what we learned from New America last year is these were the same concerns. And so we tried to put them into a turnaround corrective action plan to have them work on an academic improvement plan and an improvement plan of their budget. Through that process, it is very clear through state law that the charter has to agree to a term if you wanted to do a term less than 5 years. So we would have to negotiate with them through this process to come to a less than 5-year agreement. But we can work on, a turnaround plan with the school if they're willing.
We need one.
So Dr. Escobedo, this is Yolanda. I just have another question on this. Because I know we just kind of go round and round in these circles. And I think the hard part for me, because we have this responsibility around authorization. We want to put forward good quality places for students that we know are really vulnerable and the things that need to happen here. But we sort of get caught up in this weird conundrum where I'm just curious, and I don't mean any disrespect, but why are they being considered for renewal if we have all of these concerns?
Well, the school brings an application forward and they can bring it to the Public Education Commission or us, and we review that. Now, the review of the renewal is based on their next 5-year term. And so I hear your concerns, and I think we would like to work on a deeper academic framework that has multiple indicators so that we can really measure school to school success. Our small 3-member team just doesn't have the capacity.
So, I mean, we're in this position, we're being told we really have no choice but to do a 5-year renewal unless they agree. And I look at this and, I understand that this is a group of students who struggle. They struggle no matter what school they're in, and they need supports. And I look at it and go, and if they were in one of our traditional schools, they would probably be getting more support and better instruction than what I can see any evidence of here. And then I look at the financial, and if this page, I'm assuming that the only error on page 9 with the operational expenditures by function, I'm assuming that the only error is that it says Montessori of the Rio Grande at the top rather than the school. But they are putting 4.1% or 41.1% of their budget into what students are receiving. Everything else is central services, central administration, school administration, maintenance. If APS put a budget like this in front of the PED, we would be told with no uncertain terms to go home and redo it. We even have statutory language that says we could not come close to submitting a budget that looks like this. And I look at this and can't figure out how they could keep a straight face. I'm sorry, how you can have a straight face and bring this budget to us looking like this.
So the question is, for me, can we agree to a term less than five years? Because in all honesty, you don't warrant it. And we want to work with you, but we cannot give 5 years. So where can we negotiate here?
Madam President, members of the board, one option would be to table this item and ask the school to negotiate with our office and to bring a term less than with a corrective action plan regarding your concerns. I will remind you, though, that we did disapprove New America's budget for these same concerns. And the Public Education Department did approve the budget in lieu of. So I just want to remind you of that process.
But I think that was mired in, I'm going to suggest that it was mired in a technicality about contract. So I think that had a big bearing on PED's decision.
That's what I read.
So that's what we're trying to avoid this time around.
And just to clarify, I want to make sure I heard this right. So the items that we're concerned about today are the exact same items that we were concerned about before when we were having their contract negotiated. Is that what was said?
I was comparing this school to your concerns, the concerns the board had last year for New America.
Yeah, but earlier, I know when we're looking at, concerns of their budget, when they were renewed last time, were these the same concerns that were brought up?
I wasn't in the seat at the last time, so
We don't have record, we don't have
that was 5 years. I could look it up. I don't know what the concern was. I do know at that time they didn't even have a review team. It was the director reviewed the application and brought the application for the board's decision. So that's a total new process for us to do.
And so who was in that position?
I mean, they were chartered in 2007, so.
Yeah. And renewed.
renewed in 2017.
Okay, so we're gonna,
We can
okay,
table.
yeah, what I would recommend is that we're gonna definitely table so that, and Principal Molina, it's like, I think it's just really wanting to be in partnership with you so that we can make sure that we're also, that our office is giving you the right information and the guidance that we need to have so that we could turn these things around. Because at the end of the day, what we're all interested in is making sure that these 150 students are getting the best possible pieces that they can have. And just based on the information that's presented to us today and the way that it's presented, we just don't have that confidence just yet. So work with the team to help present that to us so that we have better confidence in what's being presented to us around the actions that you plan to take so that we could turn this around. I think our students deserve that. And I'd like to believe that you as a principal also believe that that's what you want is in the best interest of the kids that you're also serving. And so let's table this. So by tabling Dr. Escobedo, when would be the next time that this would come through? And what is the timeline that we have to have so that we can also meet some other important guidance that we have around PEC and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so to me, state statute will ask the school to waive the contractual and renewal deadlines. So we'll start that process tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if we need a motion to table. I guess we could probably just have it on record. Let's go ahead and do it.
Is it better to, instead of tabling, just postpone it? Because that's what Dr. Escobedo is talking about. I would just make a motion to postpone.
I believe if you motion to postpone, you have to have a specific date. Table is more general.
Okay. I just thought we had to have a motion to table.
But there is a deadline, right, that you have to operate off of? Dr. Escobedo?
Yeah, the deadline is December 15th, but we will ask the school to waive that deadline. And that we've done that in the past. And they'll sign a document so that it's legally binding between the two entities.
Okay.
Okay, as long as everything is legal and we're crossing our Ts, dotting our Is.
We've gone through that before where it wasn't, so.
All right.
Okay.
And so Principal Molina is just knowing that we just want that to be a lot stronger and a better presentation around the goals and, you know, where you're headed with this so that we can also have that confidence around meeting the needs of these 150 students. So I'm appealing to that notion that I think there's a desire to want to have a partnership with us for sure. And I think that this partnership can be strengthened, but we just have to work a little bit harder on this presentation so that we have the confidence about what are the actual things that we're going to change and we're going to shift that will get us to the place where we'd feel a lot more confident with where the school and the direction of the school. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I think we have a motion. Do we have a motion? Okay,
I motion
please.
to table.
Okay, second. Who's seconding?
I'll second.
All right, let's just do a quick roll call on that, just so that we have it on record.
Peggy Muller Aragon.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Barbara Peterson.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, all right. So our next item, moving along, because we have, it's always hard when we do charters. Approval of the charter renewal with the term of 5 years for Corrales International School. So let's have a conversation on this one really quickly too. I think we had some questions out for that. Board members, what are the concerns that you have on this, or do we have any, or do we have a motion to entertain on this one for renewal?
I have a recommendation or a request for a recommendation from the school. First of all, I mean, the numbers are, you know, what they seem, so both Montessori and Corrales International have strong applications and they seem to have their finances and data tracking in order. Corrales, the lowest scores were in math and reading, but they had impressive science scores. And so I have no doubt they will overcome the challenges of the reading and the math scores. But then I did ask how many, and here's my concern. How many of your what's the total population? 214?
I think it was, oh, no, it's higher than that, right?
Or is it higher? Of your enrollment, only 44 students was a reply, are from the local neighborhood. And that comes out to, I think, 19%. And so I'd really like to see that increased. I'm curious about, you know, you have, I looked up the demographics of Corrales Elementary, which was the only school I could find in that area, and 40-some% Hispanic. It's pretty even Hispanic and Anglo, and so you have 57%. So that tells me that you're busing in kids. So the recommendation is that you increase local kiddos and serve the neighborhood some more in your enrollment. Other than that.
Yeah. Part of it is the neighborhood that they're in because they're surrounded by businesses.
By businesses.
So just their neighborhood, they have to really go outside of their neighborhood to get any children just because of where it's at, where it's located.
Right,
That's
right.
part of the difficulty.
But I guess I'd like to delve further into, you know, where are they getting their children, the students from? It would help to answer that question about how local they're recruiting.
I just think it's also important, Board Member Dominguez, to realize and know that also on our charter schools like this, there's a lottery system. And so lotteries are also, they can be a barrier to that because you've got to get on the wait list, you've got to fill out the application and be those pieces as well. So that's the other flaw, I think, on the side of charter schools, where you might have a great charter school and we have families that want to get into those, but it's a wait list. And it's also, and sometimes it's not, you know, I think you hear about this also like in like larger cities, like in New York, where people are fighting to get into like, you know, specific schools. And getting on that wait list is really difficult. I think that's one of the issues that we're also facing here. So it does become, I'm not sure that it's always a flaw of the school itself.
The system.
It's the system as well, but it does look like they have room for growth because their enrollment cap is at 300 and they're only at 243 students. So it would be interesting, but I hear your comment, and I think that's just something that we can have Dr. Escobedo and Mr. Garcia take back to the school and say, the district is just, that the board is just really interested in making sure that there's more outreach or there's, capacity building for the local students from that area. So other than that, are there any other concerns or questions with this particular charter?
No, I would like to make a motion to approve Corrales.
I'll second.
Okay.
I've got a question. I do not see socioeconomic status, free and reduced lunch information anywhere. I'm curious about what that is.
Do we have any information on that, Dr. Escobedo, for this school?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I will get you an updated graph.
We need that because I think it's important information for us as we think about what makes certain charter schools work well. And quite frankly, lots of times it is very strongly connected with what their socioeconomic status is for their families. And it makes a huge impact. So we make judgments about how excellent in this school, all of the data looks great, the resources that they're spending on their students, it looks not strongly out of line with what the demographics of the city are. They do good stuff.
Mr. Mark Tolley, the executive director, is on the line and he can answer your question.
I think that leads us to make incorrect conclusions about what's happening at a school.
So I think we have the director, you said, he's calling in?
Mr. Mark Tolley, the executive director, is on the line.
Oh, Mr.
I
Tolley.
am here. I'm online.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Let me answer just a few questions here for you. First of all, this goes back a moment. When you ask who was in charge the last time with Albuquerque Talent Development, that was me that did the renewal. So I will tell you, their last renewal had nothing to do with finance. We had worked with them on a leadership change and a complete board change a couple of years before their renewal, and they were also much bigger at that time. So I just thought I'd say that. Secondly, we are a lottery system. We do not provide transportation. It's hard to say what our neighborhood is because, of course, we don't know any district boundaries. We pull from all over the city, and parents drive their kids to us. We're at about 243 now. We have been closer to 270. We're working on outreach because the pandemic has had a weird effect, I think, on everyone. But the biggest thing that holds us back is our building. And we do have quite a bit of House Bill 33 SB 9 money, and we are currently looking to grow. We don't want to get giant, but we'd like to grow a little bit more to get away from the small school size adjustment money lost. Board Member Armbruster, I know we've talked about this a little bit in the past. The lottery does guide most of what we do. I think we're up to about 19-20% free and reduced lunch, but we also have several parents that we work really hard to fill out the forms, and whether it's a social thing or what, we have several families we know could probably use the assistance and don't fill out the forms. But it's a matter of we run a very rigorous program, but we also take what we get.
Thank you.
I know, and thank you. You've done, I just want to send some praises out there on your special education compliance. You're just doing a really phenomenal job there. And I know some of those falling scores had to do with, I think you had said, aligning the baccalaureate with the state standards. And so I know that that's where some of that came from, but I just wanted to tell you, I think you're really doing a great job for our kids, Mr. Tolley, and all of your staff.
Thank you. That definitely is my staff, my special ed people, and also the people in the APS department there that work with us on it.
Absolutely.
But I mean, the final point is that socioeconomically, you are very different from many, 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 many of our APS schools. And I think that you are able to reflect that in all of your data, which does look very good.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think we have a motion and a second on this. Any other comments already? Dr. Albright, we have a vote on this, a roll call on this, please.
May I confirm, please, that Crystal Tapia Romero motioned and that Peggy Muller Aragon seconded?
You got it.
Yay. Peggy Muller Aragon.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Barbara Peterson.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. Okay, so we'll move on to the next charter approval with the term of 5 years is for the El Camino Real Academy. And I know that there were some questions that went out on this. Is there additional commentary here? What are we thinking here?
I'm feeling the same way about this one. That
So am I.
So, I mean, cut to the chase, similar profiles as the Albuquerque Talent and Development. Can we agree to table until there is?
Madam President, members of the board, Jennifer Mercer is the executive director, and she is on the line, and she can address your request.
Yes, good evening, board members. I appreciate the opportunity to share a few things with you about our school. We're a K-2 school here in the South Valley. We have a population of 345 students across that grade span. And I understand your concerns in regards to our academic scores. I guess what I would say, first of all, is that we've made a lot of changes programmatically at our school in the last year and a half, particularly even throughout COVID, to try to address that. And I'd be happy to speak to that. I also looked at neighboring scores of schools. We have Adobe Acres, who's right behind us, and they have a lower reading proficiency than we do, and their math proficiency is 8%. So I feel like we do bring value in a lot of different kinds of ways as a charter school with our mission and vision, and I'd be happy to tell you about some of the changes and plans if you're willing.
I just want to point out, I did request this. I think my questions were about comparing you to local neighborhood schools demographically, but also, test scores. It'd be nice to have that in hand. But
yes.
And I'm sorry, you said K-12?
Yes, we are K-12 school. We have a lot of families in our school, and 94.
I just wanted to clarify that it's K-12. So they're a comprehensive school, about over 600 students, I think, right? Are you currently at 600 or where are you currently at?
No, we are currently at 345 students.
Dropped really significantly. Okay.
But that was the 600 number was years ago. Actually, I was here back then. We had 650, and that was back in about 2009. So we've actually grown our population significantly in the last couple of years.
What's your breakdown in terms of the number of high school students that you have versus, I'm just curious about like the elementary to middle to high school. I'm just curious about what that's looking like in terms of how many students are in high school.
Yep, so elementary, we have 178 currently. Let's see here for the other numbers I've got. Middle school is about, well, the secondary total is 167. So.
Okay. So
that's middle school and high school.
Kindergarten? Did I hear kindergarten was 178?
it's the elementary
Elementary.
Is 178. So that's
Middle
the,
school to high school is the 167. I mean, I'm just looking at the concerns about liquidity, that you, I mean, don't have the ability to pay your obligations there. And then also just kind of at your special education compliance. Those are, I mean, that's falling evaluation compliance numbers. So it's just concerning for those, you know, special ed children and their families.
I would be happy to get our business manager on the phone who can speak to this, because we have a lease purchase agreement that does have a significant impact. There are also building costs for us. We have a 61,000 square foot building and 11.5 acres here. So the upkeep is a little bit different for us than some of the other facilities. And one of the things she had pointed out to me as well is that because I am both principal and executive director, my salary is in a different category, which has an impact on the overall numbers. I'm happy to get her on the phone if she can, if that's acceptable, if you wanted to ask her any questions about this, because obviously that's her role and she's much more proficient in explanations.
I mean,
I would suggest we probably table this one as well,
Probably
because even
gonna
just looking
table
at the entire budget,
and look at
like every category except admin, you know, is concerning.
and just the same thing, kind of looking at your, you know, your graduation rate is amazing, like 92.1%. But then when you're kind of also looking at your proficiency, you know, proficiency levels there, I just kind of go, what, you know, what's going on there? I just want all our kids to be ready and prepared. And if we have a 16.1% reading proficiency, 11.9 math, and 23.2, but we have a 92% graduation rate, are those kids really ready to be out there? So, I mean, I would move to table so we can get some more information. So I move to table.
I will second it.
Who was the aye?
Oh, Crystal, sorry.
And just as a comment, maybe moving forward to Dr. Escobedo and Mr. Garcia, as these charter renewals are coming up and you are recommending renewal based on what their 5-year plan, their looking forward 5-year plan is, it would really be helpful if that 5-year plan was included in our documents.
we have access to.
We have access to
I
it?
think they did send us the link.
Did you link it?
Would be good to.
Then, okay.
We will improve our processes.
I mean, the other question, if we're tabling this like we did the other one, do we want them to consider less than 5 years as well?
Yes.
I was assuming it was going to be the same because that's what we said. We had the same concerns. So if you could go back to them and see what they'd be willing to do as well. Thank you.
And I just want to say, I mean, I know I don't want to be disrespectful because, you know, we said we've got students that are graduating and we've got these proficiencies. Guys, we have that same proficiency with our regular high school. So we cannot throw shade. Can't throw shade that way when it's also, it is true. So the director did mention that their performance or their academic performance pretty much is mirroring what we have there with Adobe Acres. They had, said those kinds of things. So I know that El Camino Real has, it's in my community, it's in the South Valley. And I know that there are several families that really just love this school. We have some wonderful charter schools in the South Valley that I just also know that their operational side wouldn't look this way, that it would come to us and there would be a lot of green. So if we could just get that part cleaned up, I think it would help us a lot to really understand that. But it is a struggle. And, I know for some of the public that's here and listening to this is one of the hardest pieces I think that APS is engaged in is around, we want to have we want to have choice. We want to support choice. And, you know, this school is a choice for a lot of parents for lots of different reasons. But we also want to make sure that we have a list of choices that also is going to give them great quality. And so I think if we could just clean up a couple of these things and we'll come back, I think we could be really good on this one. So we've got a motion to table. Dr. Albright, can we have a roll call, please?
Peggy Muller Aragon.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Barbara Peterson.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, all right. So our last item on this items here is approval of the negotiated, no.
Yeah.
Oh, we need Montessori. God, I'm telling you, I'm trying to move too fast. Approval of the charter renewal with the term of 5 years for the Montessori of Rio Grande Charter School. And if we could turn down the heat,
Yeah.
it's like,
You're dying.
okay, thank you. Whew. It's like, we're dying up here. All right, so questions on this one? Where are we at?
I have concerns about, but I have to say, you know, again, both Montessori and the Rio Grande Corrales have strong applications. They seem to have the finances and data tracking in order. Impressive results. Here's my concern about Montessori. It sits in a neighborhood where 2 other elementary schools are in the area. And those 2 other schools reflect very different demographics and outcomes. The Hispanic population at Reginald Chavez Elementary School is in the upper 80s percent. And at Duranes, it's about 77%. In stark contrast, Montessori on the Rio Grande accommodates 33%, 38% Hispanics. I'd like to see Montessori of the Rio Grande reduce that kind of segregation, because they need to accommodate the neighborhood. And so my recommendation is that they bring in more neighborhood children and that they accommodate in the name of equity. And I know that takes hard work and it requires facing some very hard truths. But I think they're in a good situation to do so. And I'm hopeful that they can rectify that number.
I mean, part of the problem, as I understand, there isn't transportation as well. So if you're too far away from the school, even if you're in the neighborhood, you're not going to let your kindergartner, first grader walk that far. So there isn't transportation. And I always say that without transportation, that keeps people from going to certain charter schools because they just don't have the ability. And that's why we need to work on transportation.
But kudos to them. I was just gonna say kudos to them on their proficiency rates.
Well, they're awesome.
Yeah,
I'm like, yay, good for you guys.
right.
But I was going to say, I think we have to be mindful of throwing around terms like segregation, I think, because that insinuates that this school is intentionally attempting to segregate students, which is not the case at all. And if we're talking about a portfolio of choice, a system of choice in our city, families from across the city are choosing to attend this school for a reason. Families within the Duranes community may not be for a variety of reasons. We don't know, but what is it that we want? Do we want them to pull the kids from Reginald Chavez and Duranes? Is that what we want? Because those both have pretty declining enrollment. So I think this, for me, just really relates back to having a broader strategy for our district. What are we trying to accomplish for which children and how? How does charters fit into that? How do facilities fit into that? How do academic strategies fit into that? And absent that bigger strategy, I don't think it's up to us to dictate to charter schools what ought to be their focus when it comes to recruitment and enrollment. That said, looking at the application at face value, which is what we can do, their numbers are strong, their student performance is strong, their financials are strong. So I would motion for approval.
I'll second. Yeah.
Go ahead, Board Member Peterson.
I mean, yeah, there's no question but what we're going to approve this application. There's definitely all of the concerns that Board Member Gonzalez pointed out are absolutely true. I do have some real concerns about the fact that we have families that make the decision. I mean, I went to elementary school in Birmingham, Alabama, and I know for a fact the second schools became desegregated. White flight was a real thing, and we shy away from saying that. But I do think that there are some realities in this community that are not pretty, and that families do choose to go to schools like Montessori because they have a certain amount of privilege to do that, that they can get their kids there. The socioeconomic status definitely reflects that they are very outside of who most of our community is. I think this is not to attack the Montessori on the Rio Grande, and it's not to attack families that make that choice. But I do think that we have to look seriously about how that impacts us as a district and what that means for families and for students and for real equity. I mean, one example is Longfellow is a magnet school. It made the commitment to serve its community first and foremost, but to focus on the arts and dual language and open up that enrollment. And I think that it's one of the models that can be really well done. It both supports a level of choice while still being absolutely committed to the Martinez community. As a different picture of that, Coronado opened up specifically as an entirely not districted magnet. And so I think those two schools kind of reflect two different things. And we, as a district, need to figure out where are our priorities, how do we serve our communities, and what does that really look like for equity? So, I mean, my wish would be that Montessori is a magnet school that has a commitment to serve that community and still reflect the needs and desires of the families that do choose to go there. And I think that we need to start thinking about innovation and what our array of school choice really looks like, and what does it mean overall for the community. That's not going to happen this year. I mean, I'll support this year, but I think that we need to think more broadly about how we think about innovation and what we offer to families. I mean, and one final thing, and I was talking to some parents last night about the choice they've made to charter schools, and they did it for legitimate reasons, for caring about their kids, wanting the best for kids. But one of the things that they said that does really concern me is that the reason they feel safer sending their child or children, it was two different families, to a charter school is if families don't abide by, and if children don't abide by the contract they've set up, they send those kids away. I don't know what the numbers are for actual disenrollment in charter schools based on behavior, but I do know that virtually any neighborhood school in the city will talk about getting kids back from charter schools because they have been counseled out as not being a good match. And so I think that it's not as simple and straightforward as just saying that this is a remarkable school and that these families deserve a choice.
Numbers that you were just talking about, I would like to see those.
I would like to
Barbara.
see them
So
too.
if you do have them, that would be obviously very concerning, I'm sure, to all of us. So if you all have those numbers, that'd be wonderful. The other thing, when it comes to Montessori learning, a lot of people choose that for a specific reason. And I mean, that's who I think a lot of times is drawn to that school because they want their child to be taught
In the Montessori.
in that Montessori way. I mean, so, and everybody doesn't like that style. Every parent doesn't like it.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. But I am saying that we need to contemplate the repercussions of it. And I'm not sure we always do when it comes to charters.
It's an uncomfortable topic.
Well, yeah, it's a different topic. And so, but I think also is that we've got a long-standing charter that was part of our group of charters, and it's in there and it's doing a good job. And so I want to just call for the vote, please.
Thank you.
Again, just a confirmation, Board Member Gonzalez motioned and Board Member Muro Aragon seconded.
Yes.
Thank you. Peggy Muro Aragon,
Yes, and keep doing a great job. I'm very proud of you.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. Okay, so our last item, God, we really do have a last one on this one. Yeah, this is a consent. So I'll just, do I have a motion for consent?
This is Crystal. I will make a motion.
I'll second. This is Josefina.
And this is consent for approval of the negotiated changes to the negotiated agreement between the Albuquerque Municipal School District Number 12 and Albuquerque Federation of
Not ready yet.
So have a roll call, please.
Peggy Muro Aragon,
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
And Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, okay. The last item for us, or not last items, we're getting to the end of our agenda. We really are. We'll move on to board member comments, and I'll start with Peggy Mueller Aragon.
Okay, so I just want everybody to know that the Gordon Burnell fall graduation is coming up. And that is just, obviously, everybody knows that's just my favorite. No offense, I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I do. So if you can come, please do go celebrate those children. Those students have worked really, really hard to get where they are in unbelievable circumstances. So please, please come if you can. It'll be at Bonifacio on the 15th. Is that right, Miss Albright?
I'd have to look, give me a second.
Okay. And then I just want to thank the redistricting committee members, my redistricting committee members, Carolyn Stith and Joshua Neal. They did an amazing job, never had ever done it before, but they are both absolutely brilliant and worked really hard, and they learned a whole bunch of stuff. So if you ever need to choose them to be on another one in 10 years, they're going to know exactly what to do. So thank you to them. I appreciate them a lot. And then I want to say that that we shouldn't ever discourage anyone from participating and serving our community ever. Just because they may have served in a certain administration that we may not agree with or we may not align with, that shouldn't ever keep us from serving because we may not agree with somebody. So I'm not that person. And I hope that none of us up here are that person at all. We need all the help as one Albuquerque that we can possibly get. And I don't believe anybody should be excluded because of their political leanings, whatever they are. We should just do our very best job. And then the last thing that I just want to go through, I got a whole bunch of like emails and text messages, etc. And I just want to get them out there so that people know that their voices are being listened to. And these were all about equity grading. So these are some of the things that I got. I obviously didn't vote for it because I think it should all be based on merit and not on skin color or socioeconomic So some of the things I was told is no wonder New Mexico education is the worst in the country. Raise the bar. Don't lower it. And a lot of these came from teachers and administrators. We are working to make our school better, not by lowering the bar, but by raising it. You should eliminate D's so you could raise expectations, raise the bar, and kids will then have to pass their classes with a 70%. Because if we lower the bar on grading, kids will respond by passing their classes at 50% or 40%. With my experience in education, I've learned that kids will respond positively to the structure we put in place. They will try to get over the bar instead of what is going to now happen, which is they will scoot under the bar. Competition makes you better. It raises a bar, it raises expectations, it raises output. I was told, and these were teachers, I was told to give students a 50 if they didn't turn in their work at all. Not a 0. They were supposed to get a 50. I was told it's still an F, but they can recover and they won't be so discouraged. So what I said is, if they don't show up for work in the real world, no employer is going to give them 50% of their pay so they won't be discouraged about work. Equity in grading is grade inflation. For a year, this idiotic notion has been thrown about. Yes, it will allow our high schools to improve their graduation rates without actually educating or holding our students accountable. And we're asking taxpayers to spend over $60,000 to justify it. Speak the truth, because thousands of us in our schools are grateful when you talk about what equity for grading really is. Thank you.
Board Member Gonzalez.
Thank you. I'd also like to echo my appreciation for the redistricting committee and the time that they put forth into this process, the expertise that they brought and the commitment that they brought and the hard work that they did all along the way. I'm tremendously appreciative of all of that. And I do think we ended up with a strong product, strong set of maps in the end. And so tremendously appreciative to the community representatives for doing that. I also want to express appreciation to the strong charter leaders that we have in our community and for their work to do their part to lean in to try to serve and support our students. I think it's tragic that many of the sad data that we talked about that we reviewed for some of these charter schools is echoed in some of our APS district schools. We have APS schools that are performing at single-digit proficiency and some at 0 proficiency in math and reading. And so I just appreciate the leadership of our community members who are trying to make a change. I also want to thank Mrs. Stewart in public comment for shining a light about the data and transparency issues with special education data collection, and hope that we can have more transparency, more information around some of these issues, particularly related to seclusion and restraint, and making sure, again, that we have transparency and accountability for what's happening to and with these students. And finally, I just want to express appreciation to my fellow board members for your continued and ongoing focus on student outcomes. And I look forward to our upcoming board meetings where we do focus primarily on student outcomes, where we have those goals set and we keep those students front and center. And we remember that our primary focus, the main purpose of this school district, is to improve student outcomes. And so I look forward to the point when our board gets there and focuses our time on student outcomes as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Peterson.
Let's see, first off, just a huge thank you to the staff that covered all of our community listening sessions. It was a massive effort and couldn't have been done without people going way above and beyond, on top of everything else that they're doing to keep things going. So a huge thank you to that. And I probably have said more than I need to say during the meeting, but I will send one final shout out to my members of the redistricting committee. And once again, echo the fact that there was a lack of respect for equality of voice, that they felt strongly and deeply. And so our challenge is, as we go forward, to make sure regardless of those redistricting plans, that we truly represent the entire district and that we truly look at what equity means across the district.
Thank you. Board Member Jackson.
Sure. So the one thing that I want to highlight, and I just saw this on social media, it looks as though Locker 505 was broken into yesterday or the day before or something like that. And a lot of their stuff was stolen. And that is just heartbreaking when we are trying to help our students that need the help. So I would ask anybody who might still be listening to, if you can, reach out to Locker 505, see what they need, see what donations you can send to them, especially now as we're heading into the holidays. That just might be something that we can help with. I would also like to reiterate the survey. I was going to say we only have 3 more days. We now have many more days. We have until the 16th. Can't do math right now, but please fill out the survey. As I think the meeting tonight definitely highlighted that your voice is being heard. We are listening to what the feedback is, and you are not just filling out another survey to fill out another survey. You are filling out a survey to chart the direction of our student outcomes for the next 5 years, and it is critical. And then just my last comment is I would like to highlight my 2 representatives and kind of get the final word on them for the redistricting committee. I would like to thank Scott Darnell and Jeremiah Ritchie, who are 2 men who are of the highest integrity, who work extremely hard, who were, one of whom was elected by the redistricting committee to serve as the chairman, was elected by his fellow committee members to serve the redistricting committee, and served it in the best way possible, again, with the highest amount of integrity and ethics. And I would like to reiterate, we ask the community to help us. We ask people to do things for us. And then we have the audacity to sit up here and then criticize them personally. It is disgraceful. And we need to be really careful that when we ask the public to do something, we have the utmost respect for the time and dedication that they are giving back to us. So thank you. I don't know who's still listening, but thank you, Scott Darnell. Thank you, Jeremiah Ritchie. I appreciate your representation on the redistricting committee, and I hope that you can bring your expertise again in 10 years.
And I thank you too, Scott. Appreciate it.
Josefina Dominguez, please.
Yes, so I think I'd like to say a few words about equity grading. There's a misunderstanding about that because I was brought into one of the best AP advanced placement programs in the city at Highland High School when I served there. And our 12th grade AP teacher, Joe Culverd, had the highest grades in the city, the largest number of 5s. And she would beg us, you guys need to get off that 100% grading scale. You need to go to a 4.0. And she made all the arguments. This is not a woman who had low standards. She had the best standards, and she was my mentor. And despite that, I was afraid to move off that 100. And so what I would do is play games with grades. If you turn in this essay, it'll count 500 points to make up for the 100, the assignment that you didn't do before. So I don't think we can lambast equity grading until it requires teachers to rethink what we want to count as homework. It forces us to rethink how we approach teaching, and that's always a good thing. So I'm moving on. Regarding redistricting, I also want to thank my committee member, Letha Oman, who voiced some of the concerns that Barbara Peterson's representatives voiced. And it was through several conversations and trying to understand that what was evolving, we were trying to get at the root of the problem, and it took a while before we figured out that it really is a standard operating procedure issue, because I felt bad. I felt bad that I had put Letha, and that some of us had put others in a bad, unequal situation. So I look forward to rethinking how we do redistricting for APS and getting it started in February and March, and then maybe voting on it in July, so that we have lots of room to learn, to ask questions, to fully understand the process. And then I want to thank the negotiating team. I am looking forward to a legislative session that will provide, I keep hearing this, compaction money, because you know what, as this secretary from the East Mountain area wrote in, APS secretaries and bookkeepers are the glue that holds our schools together. We are responsible for ensuring that everything runs smoothly behind the scenes, and we are the face of our schools, the first people that anyone meets when they call or come to the school. The current job description and pay for secretaries across the district is not in tune with the actual job responsibilities. The language in our current Schedule B contract includes, quote, other duties as needed. And then she proceeds to list 22 other duties as needed. And they vary. They vary. These women are awesome, and they deserve as close to $22 an hour, because many of them are single parents trying to raise children on that. And it's not just secretaries, it's also EAs, it's all classified personnel. So I look forward to getting as close to $22 an hour as we possibly can get them. And I too want to thank our staff, our incredible staff, for working so diligently on the community engagement pieces. And I am looking forward to, I'm glad the survey has been extended, because I have an appointment with Megan Miller and Vision Quest and parents there. And I think it's important to include those voices. And in fact, I asked who's in charge of Burnell. I had to put in a plug for community outreach at Gordon Burnell School. So I'm hoping we can get in time. But again, thank you to the staff and superintendent for being supportive.
Board Member Tapia Romero?
So I will limit my comments to no comments to take up all the time for everybody went over their time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll just finish up with a quick president's report. I just want to say I had a chance to listen in on the LESC. They were in session, so I was listening to what's coming out of the Legislative Education Study Committee. And, as we were listening at the School Board Association, definitely some big ticket items in terms of what they're looking at. I just want to say thanks to the superintendent for continuously putting out that conversation about the calendar, because I think it's important that we're just transparent with the community around the fact that our calendar might look different. We've got a session that's coming up, and there's definitely a lot of interest in trying to increase those hours. And just to remind the public, it's not something that we per se are the ones that are doing that, but this is definitely could potentially be the will of how this whole state is going to tackle that issue around student time and just our calendar. So I just want to say that, the community needs to be engaged. They need to be involved. And if there are concerns with that, also talk with our legislators, help us with that, either advocate on behalf of or do what you want to do on that. But I just think it's important that we've had continuous conversations with the community about that, because it's definitely something that's on the mind of our legislators coming up. There's also a lot of additional conversation about money in terms of how that's going to look different in some of the ways that they're planning to put some additional funds back into education in different ways. So if you haven't had a chance to kind of go back and look at that platform, but it was pretty much solidified through the LESC as they met over the last couple of days. I'll also just say thanks to the board members too for your commitment and the hard work that you did also around our community events. I think I was hopeful that I was going to get to every single one of them, but I ended up with a bad cold, which was not what I had planned. But I just really appreciate the hard work that the board has done too to stay connected and stay on the path to getting this done, because it is definitely a lot of work. And so I look forward to the upcoming meetings that we have with this. So I appreciate that our new administrator, Joanna King, did send out to everybody a list of those dates. So hopefully you paid attention to those, because we are shifting some dates around a little bit. So the announcement of our upcoming board meetings, due to the winter break, the next Board of Education meeting previously scheduled on December 21st will be canceled. The board will hold a special Board of Education meeting on December 19th, 2022 at 5 p.m. instead. So we're just moving it up so we don't have to, nobody wants to work during Christmas. And the next, the January special Board of Education meeting will be held on Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. I can't believe I'm already saying that, at 5:15 p.m. or immediately following the Finance Committee meeting in the John Milne Community Boardroom of the Alice and Bruce King Education Complex, 6400 Uptown Boulevard Northeast, or virtually at www.aps.edu. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. Yes, I'll hit it for you.